This September 27th, 2018 meeting of the Fairfax County School Board will now come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, a moment of silence, and the performance of the national anthem by the McLean High School Philharmonic Orchestra under the direction of Starlet Smith. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In order to comply with Section 2.23712 of the Code of Virginia, it is necessary for the board to certify that since the Fairfax County School Board convened a closed meeting on September 27, 2018, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board during the closed meeting. I have a motion by Ms. Schultz, seconded by Mr. Moon. All those in favor? That would be Ms. Strauss, Ms. Schultz, Ms. Evans, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. McLaughlin, Mr. Moon, Ms. Derenak-Kofax, Mr. McElveen, Ms. Palchik, Ms. Hines. All those against? Those abstaining would be Mr. Wilson. And that motion passes. We had scheduled a forum for this evening. That forum topic will be discussed after the regularly scheduled business meeting. So a few announcements before we begin tonight's meeting. If you would like to review a copy of the agenda and any agenda item that is being discussed tonight, that information is on the table by the auditorium's entrance. Tonight's agenda is available by going to School Board on the FCPS homepage and selecting Board Docs under Upcoming School Board Meetings. The meeting is also being streamed live online. Select School Board from the full menu, then click on the Watch Live button on the School Board Meetings webpage. Please turn off or silence your cell phone. I now call on Mr. Tignor for announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is Bullying Prevention Month. In an effort to promote awareness of school bullying, the Virginia School Board Association Board of Directors has designated the month of October as VSBA Bullying Prevention Month. Childhood bullying is a significant problem nationwide. It can cause school absenteeism and mental and physical stress, poor school performance, poor self-esteem, and in some cases, school violence. Statistics show that 160,000 children in the United States miss school each day as a result of being bullied. School board members, superintendents, teachers, and parents play a critical role in creating a climate where bullying is not tolerated. It has been proven when adults and children stand together, bullying ends. It is also Fire Prevention Week from October 7th to 13th, 2018. Fire Prevention Week 2018 focuses on the fact that in a fire, seconds count. The official theme, Look, Listen, Learn, Be Aware, Fire Can Happen Anywhere, identifies basic but essential ways people can reduce their risk to fire and be prepared in the event of one. Look for places fires can start, listen for the sound of the smoke alarm, learn 2 ways out of each room. Seconds can mean the difference between residents of our community escaping safely from a fire or having their lives end in tragedy. During Fire Prevention Week, fire safety educators around the county will work with citizens to teach them about fire safety tips, encourage them to draw a map of their home, marking 2 exits from each room and a path to the outside from each exit, practice a home fire drill twice a year, and regularly test their smoke alarms and provide activities featuring Sparky the Fire Dog. It is also Mental Health Awareness Week from October 7th to 13th, 2018. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, and participants across the county are raising awareness of mental illness during Mental Illness Awareness Week, October 7th to 13th. Each year, NAMI works to fight stigma, provide support, educate the public, and advocate for equal care. NAMI believes that mental illness issues are important to address year-round, but highlighting these issues during Mental Health Awareness Week provides a time for people to come together and display the passion and strength of those working to improve the lives of the tens of millions of Americans affected by mental illness. This year's theme is Cure Stigma. There's a virus spreading across America, harming the 1 in 5 Americans affected by mental health conditions. It shames them into silence. It prevents them from seeking help. The virus we are talking about is stigma against people with mental health conditions. But there's good news. Stigma is 100% curable. Compassion, empathy, and understanding are the antidote. Your choice can spread the cure. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I now call on Dr. Brabrand to introduce our new Human Resources Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you, Chairman Corbett Sanders. It is my great privilege and high honor to introduce to you Helen Nixon, who previously served as Chief Human Resources and Leadership Development Officer for Howard County, Maryland Public Schools, as the new Assistant Superintendent for Fairfax County Public Schools Department of Human Resources effective October 1st. Helen brings administrative and instructional experience to the Department of Human Resources. She's helped develop workforce diversity programs, streamline the hiring and onboarding processes for new employees, and worked with current employees to reinvent the talent acquisition and recruitment programs. She is a skilled educator and school-based administrator, and we are happy to welcome her to Fairfax County Public Schools. Prior to working in Howard County, she worked as the assistant to the Associate Superintendent of Human Resources and Development with Montgomery County Public Schools, where she developed workforce diversity, employee engagement, and recognition solutions. She also served as staffing coordinator in the Department of Recruitment and Staffing before being promoted to assistant to the Associate Superintendent. While in Montgomery County, she was also an assistant principal at a middle school, as well as a teacher and staff development coach. And she began her teaching career at a private school in Queens, New York. She's a graduate of Clemson University with a bachelor's degree in English. She has a master's in fine arts from Virginia Commonwealth University and a doctorate in education from George Washington University. Dr. Nixon serves as the Howard County Public Schools Liaison of the Howard County chapter of the NAACP and the Howard County Public Library System. We welcome her to the FCPS family tonight. Congratulations, Dr. Nixon.
Wow. Good evening. Madam Board Chair Corbett Sanders, members of the school board, Dr. Brabrand, Dr. Ivy, thank you for such a warm welcome. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to share some comments with you this evening. It is my great honor to serve as the Associate Superintendent for Human Resources for Fairfax County Public Schools. I have worked in education for 23 years, and tonight I stand before you with the enthusiasm of a teacher about to teach her class for the very first time. My professional journey has been nurtured and supported by my amazing family and by my parents who are here with me tonight, Demetrius and Theodora Panagoulias, who have always taught my brother and myself that education is the key to our success and that a very strong work ethic is essential. The Office of Human Resources in Fairfax County, I have come to discover, is a very special place. I had the pleasure of meeting my new team on Tuesday. I met a group of professionals committed to equity and excellence, to hiring talented and a diverse workforce, to supporting our employees as they navigate essential HR transactional processes, and to providing advice and guidance in matters of compliance and work procedures. Organizations are successful because of the people who work in them, and we very clearly have the best. The Human Resources Office provides mission-critical support to our superintendent's strategic call. Dr. Brabrand's call for a premier workforce begins with our efforts to attract, recruit, retain, and develop individuals. It is an awesome responsibility to hire the talent that serves and works on behalf of our students and our community. Additionally, a dynamic human resources office removes barriers to innovation and looks for ways to invest in efforts dedicated to continuous improvement. I have heard Dr. Brabrand say that we take care of the people who take care of our students, and it is imperative that the Office of Human Resources lead efforts to ensure that our employees and our students feel safe, have safe working and learning environments free from bullying, intimidation, and harassment. We want our workspaces and our classrooms and practice fields to be environments that allow our employees and our students to leverage their talents and to thrive. I am eager to start this work on Monday, October 1st. And before I close, I would like to offer my thanks to you, the members of the school board, for your vote of confidence. I promise to work very hard and to make you proud of that positive vote that you offered me. To Dr. Brabrand for making a place on your leadership team for me, I thank you. And to Mr. Marty Smith, our Chief Operating Officer, who has been so gracious with his time and his advice in helping me transition from Howard County to Fairfax. I am indebted to his guidance. Thank you very much.
Would you like to come up and we can have a picture with the whole board? And your family is welcome as well. I'm now going to hand the gavel over to Mr. Moon, our Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me call on Ms. Karen Corbett Sanders for a resolution.
Thank you, Vice Chair Moon. Tonight, we are honoring Dr. Angela Atwater on her retirement. She is unable to join us this evening. However, the board would like to honor her in her absence. So whereas Angela G. Atwater served with distinction in the field of education for 35 years in the state of Virginia as a teacher, principal, adjunct professor, supervisor of elementary education, and for the last 5 years dedicated to Fairfax County Public Schools as an assistant superintendent of Region 4, and whereas Dr. Atwater supported principals and school communities as the Assistant Superintendent of Region 4, demonstrating outstanding leadership skills and exceptional professionalism, conveying a vision for positive, student-centered learning environments, and setting high expectations for the achievement of all students. Under her leadership, Region 4 made gains in student academic achievement, school improvement, and equity, with a focus on the portrait of a graduate outcomes. And whereas, with keen insight into the strengths and talents of staff members, Dr. Atwater drew from her extensive knowledge of school life, mental health, and wellness to guide and mentor principals, assistant principals, and other school administrators, thus influencing the quality of services to students in our school system for years to come. And whereas Dr. Atwater set high standards for the schools and staff in her charge, always leading by example to ensure parent involvement and open communication with community members, thus making the position of Region 4 Assistant Superintendent a true resource for parents. And whereas her personal commitment to staff, students, families, and communities was evident each and every day through her exceptional integrity, her compassion, her understanding of diverse perspectives, and her ability to find common ground. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fairfax County School Board extends its highest commendation and deepest appreciation to Angela G. Atwater for her outstanding service to Fairfax County Public Schools and to the students and citizens of the community. I so move.
Is there a second? Ms. Keys Gamara. Ms. Corbett Sanders, would you like to speak on the motion?
Yes, I'll just speak briefly. It is with regret that we are having this honor without Dr. Atwater present. I have had the pleasure of working with her in Region 4 since I came on board to represent the Mount Vernon Magisterial District. And I've always been appreciative of Dr. Atwater's willingness to reach out and give a heads up and to discuss pending issues in the region and try to problem solve. And so we're sorry to see her retire, but we wish her the very best in her next endeavors.
Ms. Keys Gamara, on your second.
I do second the motion, and I'd like to say that I am personally grateful to Dr. Atwater. I just celebrated my first year on this board, and I had many opportunities to engage with her. I have called her all hours of the evening, on the weekend, and she never snapped at me, was always very open, and she never backed away from any challenge. I found her to be kind, respectful, engaging, thoughtful, analytical, and she was just persistent, and I always saw her fight for the best interests of our kids, and for that, I am truly grateful for the 1 year that I was able to work with her.
Thank you. Mr. Schwartz.
Yeah, that's a little bittersweet because Angela can't be here, or Dr. Atwater can't be here, and I was there during her hiring process, and I've greatly appreciated the service that she's done for Region 4, which is virtually my entire district. She had the largest, once the regions were reconfigured, with 5 different high schools and high school pyramids. And being a mother of 5 boys, she's one of the few who had an instant connection to Miss McLaughlin at 3 and me at 4, so she could always top us at 5. With boys doing some of the stellar things that her grown adult sons are doing, I know she's looking forward to retirement and spending a lot less time with us and a lot more time with them and with her husband, and I wish her well in her retirement.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
I too, just hoping that Dr. Atwater will have a chance to hear our public words of appreciation for her time here. I'm wrapping up my 7th year on the school board and was fortunate enough as well to be here when Dr. Atwater was hired several years ago and joined us. And as has been captured, she was extraordinarily accessible to me as a board member, where a vast majority of my Braddock schools reside. She was someone that, without question, her heart was the #1 driving force in her work. And I do think that as the mother of 5 boys that she had, Ms. Schultz with her 4 boys, Ms. Keys-Gamar and I, each with our 3 boys apiece, there was a little bit of a kindred spirit that we all shared together, because anyone who has raised boys understands that the teenage years and the prefrontal cortex are not always there at the times when you need it to be. And so I felt that she brought that type of compassion and consideration to the work that she did. And to also note out there, I come from a family of 3 girls, so I also am very partial to the joys of what it means to come from a family of daughters. But just Dr. Atwater certainly impressed upon all of us that she also had a beautiful collaborative spirit. And I always felt that no matter what issue I brought to her, I could count on her objectivity and her fairness and her willingness to listen, not just to the issues that I would bring to her, but to the families that she sought to serve, the employees she sought to guide and help. And we are very appreciative of the time that we've been able to have with Angela, and certainly wish her well after more than 35 years as an educator.
Thank you. I have 2 boys. Mrs. Strauss.
Thank you. I just wanted to also share my thanks and gratitude to Dr. Atwater for her 35 years of service to children across Virginia. Certainly her many years of service here in Fairfax County was distinguished. As was mentioned this evening, the many ways that she has served children as a teacher, a principal and adjunct professor, supervisor of elementary education, and then, of course, as our assistant superintendent. We wish you, Dr. Atwater, I'm sure you will listen to this, we wish you well, and we are very appreciative of the fine job that you did here in Fairfax County serving our children and our families. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Okay, with that, if I don't have any other board member to speak, then we'll vote on the resolution. All those in favor, raise your hand. I see the vote being unanimous. The motion passes. Madam Chair, Kevin is yours.
Thank you, Vice Chair Moon. I now call on Mrs. Strauss for a resolution on National Dyslexia Awareness.
Thank you. With pleasure, I offer this resolution honoring National Dyslexia Awareness Month. Whereas dyslexia is a language-based learning disability that causes difficulties with specific language skills such as reading, writing, spelling, and word pronunciation, and whereas the onset and severity of dyslexia varies for each individual and impacts up to 15 to 20% of the population as a whole, and whereas literacy is a critical skill needed for educational success, and individuals with dyslexia benefit from effective teaching approaches that are multisensory, systematic, and explicit. And whereas Governor Ralph Northam has recognized October 2018 as Dyslexia Awareness Month in Virginia to acknowledge educators specializing in effective teaching strategies for individuals with dyslexia, and to celebrate the many achievements of adolescents, students, and adults with dyslexia, and young children too. Whereas Fairfax County Public Schools has instituted dyslexia awareness training for all elementary and secondary instructional staff and administrators. And whereas Fairfax County Public Schools has launched the FCPS online dyslexia handbook to provide information and resources to FCPS schools and families alike as they support students with dyslexia. And whereas parents, educators, and students will benefit from increased awareness about the nature of dyslexia and the combination of strengths and difficulties that individuals with dyslexia can have. Now, therefore, the Fairfax County School Board recognizes October 2018 as Dyslexia Awareness Month and encourage all residents to learn more about dyslexia and to offer support to parents, educators, and individuals affected by dyslexia. I so move.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. Strauss, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, there has been very important research done in the recent past that has given much more understanding to dyslexia and has also informed educators in Fairfax County and across the country, and probably the world, as to the most effective way to provide students with teaching and learning opportunities so that they can be successful. And our students can succeed at very high levels if we are able to use the best practice in teaching and learning. So I know in Fairfax County, we are now striving to identify children and screen them very early on, so that we can provide the resources that are needed at the very beginning, rather than waiting before it becomes a challenge and a hurdle. So I congratulate our educators in Fairfax County Public Schools for the advances that we have gone forward with, and congratulate the researchers and also the parents who have been significant in helping to move this research forward and in getting schools to be responsive and to improve our learning opportunities for our children. So I'm very pleased to offer this resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss. Ms. McLaughlin, would you like to speak to your second?
Just briefly, I first want to echo what Ms. Strauss just said. We would not be here this evening honoring such an important resolution were it not for the incredible advocates here in Fairfax County Public Schools. In particular, I do see one of the stalwart advocates that helped bring this to our attention. I was part of a group called Decoding Dyslexia Virginia, and that is part of a national group. It began in New Jersey, and then several Fairfax County parents brought that very powerful advocacy group here to not only the Commonwealth of Virginia, but they started it right here in Fairfax County. And these parents have been powerful in not only helping Fairfax County schools improve the way in which we identify and serve our students with dyslexia, but also how we help at a statewide level. And so to those parents, I want to thank you, whether you're here in the audience or perhaps watching at home. You are an example of what makes this one of the best places to live and raise a family, because in a county of 1 million people, we have parents who bring powerful, powerful advocacy to this school board, to this school system, and our children thrive as a result of it. So I can't understate the value in what that has done, especially in my 7 years on this board. There was a time here in Fairfax when I was early on in my service that we still weren't even talking and recognizing dyslexia. So it's very powerful what we're here celebrating this evening. So my thanks to the advocates, and my also request, please, parents with your powerful voices, we need your constant input. We need for you to let us know, are we delivering on our promise? Are we achieving what we want to achieve, which is meeting every child by name and by need? And we can only know that through, again, your powerful voice and advocacy, so don't ever stop doing that. And that, to me, is just very important to be said here tonight. And Dr. Brabrand, I do want to also add, for the staff who were here at the time, your predecessor, Dr. Karen Garza, was an extremely powerful voice in leading this division on this issue, and I will always be grateful for that being one of, I think, her great changes that she brought to the division, and all of her staff who supported that work and that effort. It makes a big difference.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. So with that, I will take the vote. All those in favor? And that is unanimous with Mrs. Schultz away from the table.
At this time, I'd like to invite staff from the Office of Special Education Instruction and others who are here in support of National Dyslexia Awareness Month to please join us at the dais for a picture with the board. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call on Mr. McElveen for a resolution on Fairfax County School Board resolution on sexual misconduct.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my honor to read the Fairfax County School Board resolution on sexual misconduct. Whereas the Fairfax County School Board believes that all institutions, and especially school systems, have a responsibility to directly confront the enduring and pervasive problem of sexual misconduct in society. Whereas this responsibility requires that leaders call for reforming institutional cultures and addressing the underlying causes of sexual misconduct. Whereas school systems can and should have an outsized impact on society by educating the next generation of leaders about preventing sexual misconduct. Whereas incidents of sexual misconduct have a lasting and consequential impact on every person who is affected by them. Whereas 2017-18 Fairfax County Youth Survey data reveals that 14.2% of students reported being sexually harassed in the past year, with 20.8% of female students and 7.3% of male students reporting the aggression. Whereas Fairfax County School Board is committed to ensuring that every child feels safe, secure, loved, and cared for when he or she attends school, participates in school activities, and interacts with school system personnel. Whereas the Fairfax County School Board denounces unwelcome sexual behavior, physical interactions, statements, or online exchanges by students or school system personnel, and anyone who is subject to or observing such unwelcome conduct should immediately report it to a responsible adult in his or her school or workplace, or the Title IX coordinator in the Department of Human Resources Office of Equity and Employee Relations. Therefore, be it resolved that the Fairfax County School Board will lead a cultural change in Fairfax County Public Schools regarding sexual misconduct to ensure that the organization continues to foster a caring culture, encourage open communication, properly educate and train students and employees, and hold accountable those who fail to uphold our standards of conduct and reporting. Be it further resolved that to measure the prevalence of sexual misconduct, FCPS will continue to periodically conduct anonymous surveys of students and school system personnel to determine the best focus of resources for education and prevention of sexual misconduct. Be it further resolved that to take preventative action, FCPS will continue to require sexual misconduct prevention education for both students as part of the health and FLE curriculum and school system personnel as part of their onboarding and periodically thereafter. Be it further resolved that FCPS will maintain its enforcement of procedures to confirm that investigations are launched immediately after suspected incidents of sexual misconduct are brought to the attention of school system personnel or officials, that interim protective measures are implemented, and that appropriate disciplinary action is taken following those investigations. And be it further resolved that FCPS will continually review and update its policies and procedures regarding sexual misconduct based on research and best practices. I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McElveen, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since well before the rumblings of the Me Too movement began, our school system, just like institutions small and large around our country and world, has faced its own endemic issues of sexual misconduct. And like all institutions, the journey and introspection that brings us here today has not been easy. Our system has been faced with situations where people have been physically and emotionally hurt, and subsequently have been forced to carry that hurt with them throughout their lives. I'm sure that all of us at this dais wish it was unnecessary to bring forward this resolution, and also unnecessary to have a difficult conversation like this here. But that's precisely why it's so important for leaders to have conversations about sexual misconduct, not because they're easy, but because they're hard. And we owe it to everyone who has ever been affected by sexual misconduct to have this conversation. The more that we talk about these issues behind closed doors, the less they are prioritized institutionally, the less that people think we care about them, and the less people think we will do anything in response to them. Tonight, we will show through our words and passage of this resolution that we are elevating the discussion of sexual misconduct, and by doing so, changing the culture of this institution. It is important to consider our responsibility as caretakers of this institution. Some here may argue with me on this point, but I believe that boards in general, and school boards in particular, should not take the definition of caretaker to mean that we only take care of the integrity of the institution. Caretaker also means that we have to take care of everyone within the institution. In short, institutions, and especially school systems, are nothing without the people who are part of them. The biggest cultural change we are making through this resolution is our insistence that, in the eyes of this board, we respect the allegations of individuals just as much as institutional integrity. If even one person encounters an issue of sexual misconduct, that becomes a blemish on our institution as a whole. It is my firm belief that all institutions, not just school systems, need to take direct action and create their own statements and policies about sexual misconduct, like what is before us tonight. While school systems have a unique responsibility to support and train our next generation of leaders on these issues, this kind of education and training cannot be the responsibility of schools alone. I know my colleagues share a similar passion as me about this issue, as together we have had to sit in closed meeting after closed meeting to hear about sexual misconduct cases over the years. While this resolution says that we denounce sexual misconduct, I would go further to say that, as a board, we will not tolerate it. The data presented in our resolution that 14.2% of students reported being sexually harassed in the past year, with 3 times more female students than male students reporting the aggression, is absolutely unacceptable. Extrapolating from the survey data, that amounts to more than 25,000 students being harassed each year. Our responsibility as a school system is unique because in the most formative years of students' lives, we have the ability to teach them the value of respecting others and the difference between right and wrong, just as we have a responsibility to train adults about how to interact with our students and each other. It is critical that all schools and school systems prepare their students to make the right choices at all stages of life. The reach of our educational efforts at the K-12 level is stronger and deeper than anything that can be taught when our students go off to college and the workplace. When I entered college, I remember getting swamped with information about sexual harassment and assault, but I don't remember ever hearing about these things during my high school years in Fairfax County. Waiting until college to discuss these issues is far too late. We could not have this conversation in a vacuum without reflecting on what has been a very difficult and emotional few weeks for all survivors of all forms of sexual misconduct. Indeed, the public discourse over the past several weeks has had an indelible impact on our metropolitan region's views of and expectations for our schools. As has been on very public display, the choices that students make in high school stay with them for the rest of their lives. The allegations to which I refer, as well as the issues we have confronted in Fairfax County in recent years, have raised our community's collective conscience about the importance of educating about the issue of sexual misconduct at a young age, and it increases the urgency for us to pass this resolution tonight. I know that our community, not only here, but throughout the entire metropolitan Washington region, demands for us to work to ensure that something like that could never happen to our students here. To everyone who has been hurt by the past shortcomings of our system, I want to express my sincere apologies to you. I promise you that tonight this board will commit to doing everything we can to prevent incidents of sexual misconduct from occurring again. We must do better. In that spirit, I ask my colleagues for their support of this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. McElveen. Ms. Derenak-Kofax, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, Madam Chair. Today I went through many emotions while trying to write my comments on this resolution. In the past year, the Me Too movement has taken hold of our nation. It's resonated with many of us who've been victims of sexual misconduct. This resolution is not and should not be a partisan issue, nor is it focused on a single gender. This resolution focuses on human dignity and with the way we treat each other. The CDC reports that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men have been victims of sexual assaults, and 60% of these assaults go unreported until some time has passed after the assault. Why? Because victims feel they will not be believed. As educators, it is our duty to turn around this type of thinking. We need to inform perpetuators of sexual misconduct that their behavior will not be tolerated. And to our victims and survivors of sexual misconduct, you need to know that as policymakers and as a system, we will listen to you, and you should not fear coming forward. We are committed to do our part to make sexual misconduct stop. We need to be the ones in the schools, through our student curriculum, by training our teachers and administrators to lead this cultural change, to educate and empower, to show compassion and trust, so that the Me Too becomes a relic of our past. Me Too needs to be replaced by Never Me, Respect Me, and I encourage my colleagues to support this resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Derenak-Kofax. Ms. Schultz.
So I'm in a very conflicted place because this is a very serious subject, and one which has been countless hours of debate and closed sessions with this board. And I'm going to tell you a lot of ire. But I think this is the worst thing this board could possibly do. Resolutions frustrate me. I feel like it's our time to posture from the board table instead of working with staff to get something done. It's saying versus doing. And I think that a resolution to recognize somebody who's coming or leaving our organization who has done something stellar is one thing. This is a policy issue that the board needs to be directing the superintendent to get what needs to be done, period. Period, end of story. And the time is past talking, and that's my frustration. And I had a forum topic that was scheduled for the forum before this. Our agenda was too full. It got pushed back to a subsequent October 11th meeting that directs the superintendent very, very specifically to take action. And to take action on the part of having employees sign an annual rights and responsibilities like we require of students. And employees being the first step of acknowledging that children, minor children, are vulnerable and turned over to us by their parents, while there's an adult-to-adult component for peers, as the second or third largest employer in the Commonwealth of Virginia, is definitely crucial for us to talk about. We have to have the priority of protecting children. And this is great, but it's fanfare, and I don't feel like we do much when we put a lot of work into resolutions instead of doing what is necessary on the ground every day to make sure that the children who parents entrust to us are kept safe, and that rules are clear. There is a wide divide between expected behavior and when something happens, that if you've done it yourself, you are going to be the recipient of the penalties that we have in place. And if you know of it, you too are going to be the recipient of penalties in the event that you don't report it. There's federal law regarding this, there's state law regarding this, and there are policies regarding this. And I feel like this is a politician move. This is great. It's easy to do a resolution, I think. It throws a marker out there that we care and that we put the thought to the words, but it hasn't actually accomplished what we need to accomplish. And I think we have to take this very, very seriously. And to me, the bulk of the effort of this board has to come with a resolution in directing our new HR assistant superintendent, our new Title IX coordinator, and our superintendent to work with the leadership team and all of our employees, particularly those in positions of leadership, to effect a safe environment for our children first. And I think that I think I'm going to actually abstain from this resolution as a result.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Ms. Palchik, please.
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate being able to follow those remarks. First of all, I want to thank Mr. McElveen, and I appreciate the addition and taking into account the input from your board members. I especially wanted to make sure that because this resolution is very prescriptive and does give steps that will be taken, that we ensure that it is not a once and done, but that we will continue to review and update the policies. That being said, while I generally agree with you, Ms. Schultz, that I want us to focus on the practice and the procedures happening on the ground, sometimes, and issues like this, I believe require setting the tone from the leadership level. And so I do appreciate Mr. McElveen ensuring that we not only fix practices that over the decades have needed to be fixed, but that we make it very clear to our students, to our staff, and to our family that it must happen, it must change, and that they have a place to go if they do not see this happening. This is the beginning and not the end of the improvement that we need to make here in Fairfax County for our students and that our nation needs to make. As someone who, it looks like the latest research, 81% of women have faced some form of sexual harassment in their lives. You know, definitely, I am one of those women. It is not something that we speak about easily, lightly, or ever really in public. And I think it is time that we create the space for that to happen. So being a graduate of FCPS and knowing that, as Mr. McElveen said, this is the place where girls, boys, everyone in our community should be educated and should understand their rights, their responsibilities, and those of the adults who work with them every single day. This is critical. This is not enough. These are words on paper. This is not practices. These are not procedures. This is not the change in culture. That is up to us and the administration and our educators every day, and our parents and our kids, to make sure that we get there and that we hold ourselves accountable. So no, this is not done. This is the beginning, and I will support this. I appreciate the work. It is very evident, not just in our classrooms, in our closed meetings, in our schools, but also very clearly in our society that we can no longer wait to do this. So I hope that we reduce the number of girls and boys and students dealing with sexual harassment and increase the number who are educated and who know how to prevent and come forward when they do face it. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palchik. Ms. McLaughlin?
The benefit of following several colleagues is you get to either help echo and reinforce the important points that they've made. So I want to first say that, as Ms. Palchuk noted, I'm very appreciative to Mr. McElveen for bringing this. As the elected officials of this school division in this county, with the 10th largest school system in the United States, that affects not just 190,000 students, but the 40,000 employees who we are just as equally committed to ensuring that they're not subjected to sexual misconduct. It is extremely important that we take a very public message on this. But as Ms. Schultz said, and I had just written in my notes, it's the actions, not the words, for which this board will demonstrate its serious commitment. And so Mr. McElveen has provided this board a very expedient opportunity to let our community know that we do understand the time that we are in, the events that have happened in this school district, and that we have to be held accountable as the elected officials of this school board. We recognize, and therefore making this resolution is a way for the public to understand that we are going to begin with intentionality on how do we execute on our promises and our commitments in a way that I don't think we've been able to do at the level that we should. And we need to ensure that our students, our employees, and our families have the confidence that this board, this superintendent, and the school division understand its serious responsibilities. When I graduated from college almost 30 years ago as a young 22-year-old, I really didn't understand what sexual harassment was. In the 80s, I thought it was just being complimented by the older gentlemen that I worked with in the work setting. When they made comments about how I looked, whether about my appearances, I thought I was just supposed to smile and take it as a compliment. And I think a vast majority of them probably really did think that they were giving me a lovely compliment. But the comments were more than just I had a pretty dress on. It was how I looked in my dress. And again, I just sort of thought that was par for the course. And it's been amazing to me in these 30 years to see how society has started to appreciate and understand that when those kind of remarks are made, and for any woman who's been on the receiving end of it, you know when it makes you kind of nauseous inside and you kind of wish the comment hadn't been made, but you just brush it off. And those are the light examples of harassment. And tragically, here we are 30 years later, and we have had students and families bring cases to us and say, do you not understand that this is sexual harassment and that this is more than uncomfortable, it's disruptive and disturbing and upsetting to our children. And so I want to echo what Mr. McElveen said. As one board member, my deepest apologies to our families that we have not, as a school division, done better, and we can only show through our actions going forward our commitment to doing better and being the educators, as Ms. Palchuk said. That's what a school system is supposed to be, and it's educating the whole child. And you educate a whole child by not just ensuring that they understand, they learn the academics, but they learn how to be a good citizen. And for our employees, helping them to really understand what a no tolerance is. And so I guess I want to just close by saying to those in the community who've worked so hard to help this school division understand that when this is happening, it's wrong, and that the system has to be 100% accountable, and that you have to understand what has happened in order to not let it happen again. And I remain committed, deeply committed to that effort, and therefore look forward to supporting this resolution tonight.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. Evans?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I do want to thank Mr. McElveen for putting together this excellent resolution. You did a fine job, and both Mr. McElveen and Ms. Nardak-Kofax did an excellent job of outlining the reasons why this is important. It's important to have a clear and unequivocal statement on this issue, now more than ever. We are an educational institution, and as such, we have a responsibility to educate all of our students, both male and female, on how to recognize and how to combat sexual harassment and misconduct. We all need to be able to speak up, and we all need to take positive action. I will point out that this resolution actually has action items in it. It's not a passive resolution at all. There are 5 different resolves in here. The first being making sure we lead a cultural change. We've heard in the past several months, actually it's been longer than that, it's been years, well, you know, it was just horseplay. Well, it was just joking around. We need to understand that certain things will not be tolerated, will not be excused as just horseplay or just joking around. So the first piece of this is a cultural change. That's important. An anonymous survey of students. I know I'm repeating, but I just want to point out that there are action items in here to determine the best focus of our resources, continued training of our personnel, our staff, as well as continued education of our students through our health and family life education curriculum, and that investigations will be launched immediately and protective actions taken immediately, as well as our using best practices. So I'm very happy to support this both as a statement of principle and as a blueprint and a guidepost for moving forward on this really important issue. When you see that 1 in 5 girls report that they have been sexually harassed in the last year, we're talking about in the last year, and a lower number, but a significant number of boys as well, we know we have to take action until we get to the point where that number is as close to 0 as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Ms. Hines?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our resolutions are statements, public statements of values and purpose, right? When we, as elected officials, signal on behalf of the community clear expectations to the superintendent and staff and to our students, it's important that we take a pause at this time to do that. At this time, when sexual misconduct just seems so pervasive and toxic, and we're struggling as a nation to even have a safe and productive conversation about it. When we here in FCPS, as we've alluded to, have not escaped serious charges, charges that please trust us, as a board, we take very seriously, and the superintendent takes very seriously, and we have taken extremely seriously, but because they involve confidential and private matters, we are not able to have full conversations about particular cases with the community. This resolution gives us a chance to be clear and to be heard and to be public about what our values are and our expectations are. I believe that the students, the employees, and this community need to hear from us now a clear pledge and statement of our commitment to this community's values and our community's integrity, and to leave no doubt about what we expect from the school system when it comes to protecting our students and our staff. So I thank Mr. McElveen, and I will support this resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Ms. Keys-Gamarra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too will be supporting this motion, but I also want to just note the various feelings that have been expressed at this dais today. It is a very serious and somber moment. I understand the frustration expressed by my colleague, but I think many of my colleagues have said we are setting the standard. When Martin Luther King gave the speech, the I Have a Dream speech, it truly was a dream. It was something that we aspired to achieve. And this resolution states our intentions as a board of what we believe we are working to achieve. I want to assure you as one board member, and certainly many of my colleagues have done the same, since the first day I came on this board, we have been fighting and talking about these issues to try to make sure that every child feels safe in our schools. It is our fundamental belief that we have a duty to insist upon a culture that discourages sexual misconduct and encourages victims to speak up. No victim should ever be ashamed, should ever feel that their value is less than it is because of an experience. And this resolution acknowledges that these are the types of situations that can damage the souls of our children. So I want our students to know that we will leave no stone unturned in our efforts to build, protect, and maintain a healthy educational environment. I too hope and will continue to work toward a policy where we can gather and develop transparent procedures and protocols. So first of all, our parents know if something does occur, what to expect and how it will be handled. And that our kids know that we will work to make sure that they can move forward and that their education will not be interrupted. I do look forward to working with Ms. Schultz and my colleagues to develop those policies with respect to our employees, but also with respect to so that our students can know how everything will be handled. We have to not just talk about it, we have to live it. And that is what I'm pledging to do. That is what I believe this board is pledging to do, and that is why I support this resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Keys-Gamarra. Ms. Strauss?
Thank you. I will support this resolution. It is a statement of value, and it is important that the school board state its values because that is the basis for our policies and our practices. This resolution goes, and I'm pleased, beyond a statement of value. It is a statement of what we will do, what we expect the school division to do. We expect that anyone, whether student or employee, who either observes or is a person receiving of inappropriate sexual behavior, that is immediately reported to a responsible adult or to the Title IX coordinator with the Department of Human Services and Resources. And I would like to thank Dr. Braybrand for taking the step to appoint the Title IX coordinator. We have met her. She is very impressive. And I think that this will help us considerably in making this culture change. So again, thank you for going ahead and doing that and understanding the determination that we have in making this culture change. We are committed to making sure that we are going to prevent these actions. It clearly states our continued education for employees and our students. In an education system as ours, it means that this is a continuous education process. Every year we have thousands of new students. We have thousands of new employees. So the education process is constant and it is repeated every year. This is never a one and done situation. We are asking that there be surveys and accountability mechanisms so we can see how we are doing. We are asking that reports are investigated immediately so that action can be taken. So a statement of value, actions we expect, actions we will take with new personnel to help us to make sure that we are enforcing these. Thank you very much, Mr. McElveen, for bringing this forward, and with pleasure I will support it.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think everybody has spoken very eloquently on this, and so I won't add a whole lot more on that. I did want to actually ask the superintendent a question because the data that's stated in the resolution where it says 14.2% of students reported, is that an accurate statement? Because I think 14.2% of 190 students is almost 27,000 students reported sexual aggression in our survey.
Yeah, I don't have the youth survey line-by-line question. We pulled this as part of the resolution, and I can bring that and do a follow-up to the board, but we pulled from that youth survey to get this data.
Yeah, page 93 of the survey, page 39 of the PowerPoint.
So it's not 14.2% of surveyed students. The question, I guess, the reason why I raise it is not, I don't have an objection to the perspective of the resolution, but I do think that it's important that we be clear in terms of what numbers we're putting out there and stating to the community, because 20.8% of female students is 20.8% of 95,000, which is almost 20,000 of our girls reporting annually. And I just, if that's the case, I would really like to know if that's the case and confirm it here at the table so we can confirm to the public.
So Mr. McElveen, you pulled these statistics. Would you like to address that?
Right, I'm sure Teresa Johnson could as well, but it's based on the Fairfax County Youth Survey, the most recent version that was released this past Monday. And obviously that's not polling all of our students, it's polling a representative sample. And that's why when the resolution says the data reveals that 14.2%, that is of those being surveyed. So in my remarks, I said extrapolating that, yes, it's more than 25,000 of our students, but we didn't measure every single student.
So that would include then, say, elementary school girls?
No, no.
Okay, so it's a survey of 8 through 12. So then how many students are surveyed in 8 through 12? All of them?
All of the students are surveyed, but I don't have the exact numbers in front of me,
Okay.
Mr. Wilson. I can go back and look and get you that exact number if you'd like.
Yeah,
Dr. Panarelli's coming up.
Yeah, it's, I think it's important that we nail that down a little bit, because I think one of the thoughts that's in the resolution is that we will continue to foster a caring culture, that we'll continue to periodically conduct surveys, and we'll continue to do the prevention and the training, and you know, I don't want to, I guess my feeling is that I don't want to send the wrong message to the community that we're currently not doing all that we can, but that really it's a continuous improvement cycle. And so I think that getting that aspect of it, what's the data, what does the survey data really mean when we're talking about the actual number of children?
So there are roughly 35,000 children who are surveyed, and the number referred to, the 14%, would be of the 35,000 who are in grades 8, 10, 12. We certainly see more students in grade 12 reporting having been harassed than students in grade 8, for example. So there are some differences that make it difficult to simply extrapolate across all 190,000 students.
Mm-hmm. So then nearly 21% of half of the 35,000, which would be the young women, so that we're saying that 21% of 17,500 would be 4,000 or 5,000 kids are reported being harassed every year.
Yes.
Okay. Well, and it's not the exact same numbers that Mr. McElveen put forward, but obviously a dramatic number that requires our attention, and I think the statement is appropriate. But I think that it's useful to clarify and also to underscore that as a school system, we do care about your kids, and we are on a daily basis looking at and talking about the policies and how we can improve our policies and our culture. So it doesn't start with this resolution. I think this is a statement in time that we're recommitting and rededicating ourselves to protecting our children in this way. And I think to that extent, I will support this resolution. But I did want to make clear, and I think that those numbers are sort of eye-popping for me. And I think we ought to, as a board, bring this back in a work session and have those numbers explored and really find out how can we get to some of the questions about getting down to the whys of, I think one of the first whereas clauses says addressing the underlying causes. And I think that's a great point to make, that we have to unpack that data. It has to be more than a statement. by the board so that we can address the underlying causes and try to get at this issue. Because I think that, but judging from the comments from this board, that we really, as a culture, we're not improving on this point. And I think it would be wonderful if Fairfax County could lead the way in improving in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Tigner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. McElveen, for putting together this resolution. This is only my second meeting, but it's the first time I've actually spoken on a resolution such as this. But I'm honored to be able to speak on a resolution of this type. I speak towards you as a student currently within FCPS, and the fact that some, let alone most, of my female friends have come to me about issues of sexual harassment is not acceptable. Pressures of being a student can range from family life, friends, grades, and college. And I actually have an older survey, but from 2016, 2017, 35% of 12th grade students, counting school, homework, jobs, and extracurricular activities, work nearly 15 hours a day. And this causes that these friends that have come forward to me, they sometimes overlook the impact of sexual harassment. And its impacts are much longer lasting than our culture would lead us to believe. So I urge the board to support this resolution and create action to provide avenues for support, create clear protocols on what is sexual harassment, and provide a safe school environment for all our students within FCPS.
Thank you, Mr. Tigner. Mr. Moon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will support this resolution. I want to thank my colleague, Mr. McElveen, trying to work with as many board members as possible in crafting the resolution. I know that you had also worked with the staff, including division council, and appreciate that for all the time and effort you put into drafting this resolution for the adoption this evening. I have a question for you, Superintendent. The action items that this resolution is seeking for, should the board expect for you to report back to the school board sometime about what you would be doing in response to the resolution? There will be, I believe, there will be passed tonight.
I think that would be appropriate. We've done a lot, and we need to continue to do more. And I think finding the right forum for additional discussion and context about the efforts that we're already undertaking and those that we will as a result of this resolution would be appropriate.
And could I put you on the spot to ask you what sort of time frame we are talking about, whether we are talking about 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 2 years?
No, I think sometime between now and the end of this calendar year before our winter break, it would be appropriate for this board and our staff to engage you on this topic in a work session or in a manner that you all find best. But I think we can do it in the next month or two, and certainly no later than before winter break.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. Now I will take the chair's privilege by first thanking Mr. McElveen and Ms. Derenak-Kofax for bringing this resolution forward. It's an issue that every member of this board has expressed concerns about, for the need to be more public about the work that is being done and the work that needs to be done by the school system. The commitment to making a public statement and shedding more light on the topic was expressed by multiple board members over multiple months as we discussed the need to have a cultural change in our schools and in our community. The culture of an organization starts at the top. We know that instances of sexual misconduct have lasting effects on students. We know that victims experience greater incidences of mental health challenges such as drug abuse, post-traumatic stress, and depression. A caring culture means that we owe it to our children to be vigilant in how we address sexual misconduct in our schools and hold those that engage in or cover up these behaviors accountable. It is especially poignant that we are doing this resolution on the same night that we recognize mental health awareness, and that the county announced today the Step Up for Kids initiative to provide supports for children that have experienced or witnessed domestic violence. And as the chair, I would like to remind all of our board members that tonight is not the only time that this board will be discussing these important issues. Dr. Brabrand has made recent hires and appointments that will engage in the process as the new Assistant Superintendent of HR, the Title IX Coordinator, and the new EER Coordinator. And as you've heard from Mrs. Schultz, we will be having a forum discussion on October 11th to discuss a new Employee Rights and Responsibilities Manual. And later on in the fall, Dr. Brabrand has committed to bringing forth a discussion of the protocols for Title IX as well. And so this is the beginning of a more public discussion of many of the conversations that we have had in light of closed sessions and elsewhere. And so I support this, and I once again thank Mr. McElveen for bringing it forward. And with that, I would like to take a vote. All those who can support the motion on the table. That includes Ms. Hines, Mr. Wilson, Ms. Palchik, Mr. McElveen, Ms. Derenak-Kofax, Mr. Moon, Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Evans, Ms. Strauss, and Ms. Corbett-Sanders. All those opposed, those abstaining would be Ms. Schultz. That motion passes. The next order of business is citizen participation. Tonight, 6 citizens have signed up to address the board. Speakers are requested to limit their remarks to not more than 3 minutes. The school board will not hear statements involving issues that have been scheduled for public hearings, such as capital improvement program, budget, and boundaries. Complaints regarding individual students or school-based employees should be directed to the appropriate school principal or other school official. Speakers should refrain from using personally identifiable information in connection with an individual student. Speakers are expected to deliver their comments with the decorum and respect appropriate to the conduct of the public's business. Please be mindful that there are often young children in attendance at these meetings or watching at home, so language should be appropriate for all age levels. Thank you for your cooperation, and thanks to all of those who have come to speak to us tonight. I would like to start with Mr. William Park, followed by Ms. Ellen Messing and Kevin Hickerson.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to address FCPS's resolution on sexual harassment. While I appreciate Board Member McElveen's attention on this important matter, what is needed from FCPS personnel and the members of this board is resolve, not resolutions. Resolve to take tangible actions to hold individuals accountable for inappropriate behavior and failure to follow existing policies when inappropriate behavior is reported. The harsh reality is there have been significant incidents of sexual misconduct at multiple FCPS high schools in the past 3 years. Furthermore, this board is under federal investigation in 5 cases plus 2 pending federal lawsuits due to the board's inability and unwillingness to ensure FCPS follows Title IX regulations that protect our children from sexual misconduct. A resolution to maintain procedural and enforcement rings hollow given your abysmal current rate of compliance stems directly from your refusal to ensure existing policies are followed. In stark contrast, FCPS's culture of denial, deceit, and cover-up is the only procedural practice in which FCPS has a 100% success rate. When we provided multiple FCPS officials and every member of this board with undeniable evidence of sexual harassment, you lied, denied, and covered up. You wish to pass a resolution to confirm that investigations are immediately launched after suspected incidents. Yet you continue to employ and defer to a general counsel who has approved an investigation that failed to interview the victims, the perpetrator, 20+ witnesses, while engaging in unlawful employment practices by retaliating against a fact witness. Further, the superintendent released a falsified letter of findings from that sham investigation stating that nothing happened. The resolution speaks of taking appropriate disciplinary action against personnel who fail to uphold standards of conduct. Yet after FCPS leadership fired at least 12 employees across tied to Lake Braddock and South County debacles, you allowed FCPS leadership to lie to the communities by telling us these offenders retired, when in reality, FCPS paid them not to work. How does that instill workforce accountability? Some board members have spoken privately to the Lake Braddock victims, telling them that the totality of this school board admits sexual harassment occurred. Yet you refuse to execute your oversight duties to direct the superintendent to correct the letter of findings and issue an apology to the victims for FCPS's deceit, denial, and cover-up. You begin to address, only when you begin to address the sexual harassment within FCPS, you don't need additional policies or regulations, and you certainly don't need a meaningless resolution. What you need is resolve to do what is right, which is 1, enforce the policies that already exist. Hold individuals and yourselves accountable to address this critical issue, and 3, demonstrate contrition when it's obvious FCPS failed to protect our students. If you're serious, do not merely write more words. Take the appropriate and necessary action to provide for the safety and well-being of our children. Thank you.
Ms. Messing, followed by Mr. Hickerson.
Good evening. I'm here to speak about the review committee for challenged materials. And I want to mention that the review committee should not be the first line of defense. That's far too late. I have to skip a lot, but there are 250 copies of Dog Man as well as LGBT material, promotional material, currently in the library for the little children. And Dog Man depicts dogs playing toss with feces. That was part of a second grader's school lesson here in Fairfax. She brought the cartoon book home to read to her family. Similarly, your sex education policy contradicts scientific reality, contradicts biblical principles, and contradicts most of the principles of world religions. All parents are not aware at all of what's being taught. Many who promote alternative lifestyles have been molested. I am a survivor of incest. I know the torment of realizing something is wrong, but being powerless to do anything about it. I was feeling dirty and ashamed, and my life was tainted by it. I was very close friends with people in the homosexual community. The lifestyle is far from happy. The Center for Disease Control reports that homosexual men are 100 times more likely to contract deadly HIV and AIDS than other men, and hundreds of thousands have died from these practices. And yet you're teaching children that homosexuality is normal and healthy sometimes. I do not call that a safe place for children. And I've read the curriculum all the way from 4th grade to 12th grade, and I am astonished when it discusses sex trafficking and having 30 customers a night. I know who I was in high school, and that is appalling. Your curriculum endorses the use of PrEP. I'd never even heard of PrEP, but it basically protects uninfected boys when having sex with infected males. Now, who are these infected males? Other little boys? No, adult males. So that's pedophilia, and that's something being taught in our classrooms. That was starting in 10th grade. I remember 10th grade. Greater gender confusion can happen in adolescence.
So, Ms. Messing, you need to wrap it up. We have 3 minutes.
It's better to tie a stone around your neck and jump in the sea than defile these children. I'll leave with that. Oh,
Mr. Hickerson?
I really hope that you find a way out of this.
Ms. Messing, I'm sorry, your time's expired, thank you. So, Mr. Hickerson, followed by Mr. Wojcik and Ms. Heiser.
Good evening, Chairman Corbett Sanders, fellow school board members, Superintendent Brabrand, and staff. My name is Kevin Hickerson. I'm president of the Fairfax Education Association. I'm speaking tonight on the roof replacement at Chantilly High School. I'm glad that you're putting money towards infrastructure repair, especially at the school I taught at for 12 years. Go Chargers. The community may not know this, but we have over 200 work sites in Fairfax County that are all in need of some sort of work. FCPS workers do an amazing job of finding problems and fixing them in a timely manner. I've met many of our painters, building engineers, and repairmen on my travels around the county, and I can tell you that they are working at their utmost best to be able to make our classrooms and work sites comfortable to teach and for our children to learn. That being said, our student population keeps growing, our classrooms are bursting at the seams in most buildings, and we are using trailers as a bandage over our permanent buildings not being able to handle the influx. Last year, you took the bold step of asking the county to take on more bonds to increase the amount of revenue, to quicken the pace of renovation and construction to our buildings. You should be applauded for that. The work to find more funding is far from complete. We need you not only to ask Fairfax County to continue to help fund desperately needed infrastructure improvements, but we also need you to the state to pick up their fair share of the costs. The Virginia Education Association is doing just that. We are working to reinstate dedicated funding for capital improvements to our public schools. Virginia is spending 33% less in inflation-adjusted dollars as we did in 2008 on capital improvements. That is unacceptable. What I'm asking you to do, as the largest school system in Virginia, is to work with the Virginia Education Association in making the case to increase funding for infrastructure improvements. Your voice will not only help Fairfax County students and faculty, but will help children in Tazewell, Martinsville, Colonial Beach, and hundreds of other localities that need this money as well. A rising tide lifts all boats, and a rising tide helps all students. To help spread the message of increasing funding for public schools, the VEA has launched a Red for Ed campaign statewide. We are encouraging our educators and fellow community members to show solidarity by wearing red on Wednesdays. I am optimistic of what we can do together, and I look forward to seeing you all in red. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hickerson. Mr. Wojcik, followed by Ms. Heiser, followed by Ms. Walton.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address my concerns. I'm a 42-year resident of Fairfax County and currently have 3 grandchildren in the public school system. I do not understand what academic purpose the following materials and lessons provide to our children. Dog Man is a book in our libraries which our school encourages 2nd graders to read. This book is extremely disturbing. In this book, the dog caricatures play with their feces. Why are 2nd graders being exposed to an unsanitary and repulsive behavior like that? What is the academic value? It's also very disturbing to learn that the school system is teaching blatantly false medical and health information through the FLE program. This curriculum teaches that sex is assigned at birth, which is now directly conflicting with school lessons in biology. Amazing. Another misleading thing taught by the FLE is that abstinence is not 100% effective at preventing sexually transmitted infections. The fact that some diseases or STIs can be contracted in other ways undermines the basic truth that you never have sex. If you have never had sex, you cannot contract a disease sexually. Finally, I would like to rebut the false claims made by local LGBT activists at the last several school board meetings about public comments on these topics. The avalanche of over 1,100 comments opposing the harmful changes to the FLE curriculum submitted earlier this year were not from non-residents or from fabricated email addresses. These emails were sent by Fairfax County residents, not some outside entity. Yes, the Family Foundation sent out a public awareness announcement and form letter to contact county residents, as did the over 1,000 member concerned parents and educators of Fairfax County, many of whom submitted comments to the FLE changes. These emails were a wake-up call to FCPS parents to bring awareness to the FLECAC process, and I am so thankful they did. The true reality is that 85% of the comments submitted about the FLE changes this past year, which, by the way, will encourage sexual harassment, were because the public is overwhelmingly against what you are doing. A Muslim American recently testified at a school board meeting that their community of 10,000s has not been informed and therefore have not consented to the controversial content of the FLE sex ed program. They were not even informed that they could opt out their children. By going forward with the FLECAC recommendations, the school board is in effect acknowledging that most ethnic minorities and thousands of other FCPS families would be so negligent that they would consent to the sexualization of their children if they knew about it and wouldn't opt out their children if they knew they could. This is grossly inaccurate and unforgivable, and you should all be ashamed. Thank you.
Ms. Heiser, followed by Ms. Walton.
Hello, my name is Ms. Heiser. I'm on many boards, but I'm here as an individual. So I want to thank you for this time. I'm here to speak about this social studies and science and graduation requirements in general. I have spoken to you many times about needing better alternatives to SOL exams and needing more varied diploma options. I emailed you all earlier this week about VDOE's change in policy regarding, enacted last week, and putting a special credit accommodation in for certain students with disabilities who are passing grade level classes, but not able to pass a standardized test. I personally am proud for this change because it allows us to maintain accountability through these students passing grade level classes without a limited and artificial narrow definition of demonstrating competency, i.e. a standardized exam. This standard narrow definition, which has limited our children's futures by denying them a standard high school diploma. I know we in Virginia and here in Fairfax County don't want to graduate a generation of test takers. We want to graduate a generation of critical thinkers and collaborators. Very few of those skills, critical thinking and collaboration, is tested on a standardized test. And our teachers spend way too much time teaching to the test than teaching those critical thinking and collaboration skills. Meanwhile, study after study shows that post-secondary success and success on a standardized test are not related at all. So I personally am proud about this, but I'm here to tell you that I believe VDOE's special credit accommodation, while helping my son, is too narrow. It only applies to certain students with an IEP or 504. They have to be qualified with permission from VDOE, taken past the SOL, and then receive this accommodation that's awarded by the local school system. Since it's awarded by the school system, I ask this of you. Please implement a reasonable policy that allows both reasonable to qualify for this and reasonable to achieve it. So it is not just an accommodation in name only. Right? Please have a process in place that is not burdensome to your teachers and staff who are already overburdened. There is a process in place already for locally verified credits. I recommend you look at that process so you don't reinvent the wheel. And finally, I ask that you take some time to track the data on this new accommodation to see how it's being used. And I want to tell you from a personal reason why this is too narrow. I've told you about my son. I have not told you about my daughter. My daughter is in Ivy League school. She graduated from Fairfax County. She took 13 AP exams in her time in high school. She's studying computer science in an Ivy League school. She also failed an SOL exam. She failed an SOL exam because her father had died a year ago and she had suffered trauma, and a year later she failed her first math SOL exam even though she was in an AAP program. You do not know the stories of students in high school who may have a trauma, are sexually assaulted, have a death in the family. Luckily for her, it was third grade, but we have students in high school, and it shouldn't affect them.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Walton.
Hello, good evening, Chair Corbett Sanders and school board members and Dr. Braybrand and staff. My name is Joanne Walton, and I'm here tonight speaking on my own behalf. But before I read my official statement, I just wanted to give you some really neat feedback that I received from my friends at Decoding Dyslexia in Georgia and Decoding Dyslexia in New Hampshire, who are really, really impressed with the work that y'all did on the dyslexia handbook. So they just wanted to let me know, and I wanted to share that with you because I know it took a lot of effort, but it's getting noticed everywhere, not just here. So I basically am here to thank you so much for creating the position on the Advisory Committee for Students with Disabilities, the ACSD, for the Fairfax County Special Ed PTA that was formed 1 year ago, and what a year it has been, right? I'm so grateful for your support of our special needs students here in Fairfax County. As a parent of 2 students with special needs, it's been quite an experience to start coming to the school board meetings and bringing my concerns and being heard. And I just really wanted to take the opportunity to let you know I appreciate that very much. And I appreciate all the work you're doing for the 26,000 or more than 26,000 students in FCPS with special needs. And I'm glad that they have a voice and will be included in the One Fairfax initiative. One of my roles with the Fairfax County Special Ed PTA is to try and attempt to coordinate special ed liaisons for local PTAs at the schools here in Fairfax County. And as of last night, our first meeting, we are now up to 60 schools with special ed liaisons. Most are parents, some are teachers. Some schools actually have more than one, so that's really great. My schools do, so that's lucky for me. And in some cases, basically this isn't due to strong support that we have received from the Fairfax County Council of PTA, and they really have helped us to spread the word about SEPTA. So part of the role of the liaisons at the local level is to, of course, encourage inclusion of their students with special needs in all aspects of the school community. And the other role is to actually try to bring sort of what's going on at the countywide level in special needs to their families at the local level. And part of that is the information about the fact that there is an advisory committee for students with disabilities, because that's something that I just learned about last year. And so we really we look forward to working with the ACSD on ways to increase the visibility of the ACSD as a resource for students and parents. We believe it is a very critical tool for special needs families, and we hope that you guys will support the inclusion of a brochure at the IEP meetings.
Walton.
Yeah, so that would be really great if you could give out the brochure so that the families will know about it. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. So now we come to student matters. I call on Mr. Tignor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last weekend, I attended a Virginia Student Council Association meeting, the first official one, and met with leaders from high schools across Virginia. We passed on ideas for providing leadership roles to students, because positions out there might be many of them, but many of our students don't know about them, and that's an important thing to get that awareness out there. We also began planning for a statewide service project that we'll be carrying out earlier on in the next year. I also attended the Centerville Immigration Forum event on the 21st of September. It was a nonprofit organization dedicated to making Centerville a welcoming community for immigrants. And I'd like to congratulate those who were honored with awards for their contributions to their community, including Mr. Moon. Congratulations, and thank you. I also attended the first SAC meeting. It's the Superintendent Advisory Council. It's a powerful group of students. There are 4 elected from every high school in FCPS to sort of compile a presentation with some recommendations to our superintendent later on in the school year. I look forward to working with all of them. They're a great resource for me. Provides sort of a broad diversity of student perspectives that I can draw upon. And also for all of you out there, homecoming is going on at schools currently, and as a parent, I encourage you to volunteer and help out. And as a community member, I encourage you to go and participate in some of the parades that are going on. I know from South Lakes High School, we've got a big homecoming parade coming up on the 26th of October. And generally, that's these schools working on the community image and giving back to the community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Tignor. Now I call upon Dr. Brabrand for an opening of schools report.
Good evening, Chairman Corbett Sanders, members of the school board, community, leadership team. It's exciting. I know everybody is ready. We have our annual opening of schools report, and I am proud to share with you the opening of schools has gone well and smoothly here in Fairfax County. And I want to give you a few highlights over the next few minutes about Fairfax County Public Schools and how things are going. First of all, many of you already know we are projected to have over 190,000 students this year. We're the largest school division in Virginia, the 10th largest in the country. Almost 200 schools and centers. We're the largest employee in the county. 94% of our folks are school-based, 6% are non-school-based. We have a graduation rate that's over 90%, almost 90% of our graduates going to post-secondary. And this class of 2019, the last group that just finished, we have 254 National Merit semifinalists, a record number for Fairfax County Public Schools. Look at all the community engagement. We have our students doing over 500,000 hours served by our students, and 28,000 of our students engaged in community service. And speaking of service, one of the facts in Fairfax County, over 11,000 of our students are military connected, and we thank them for their service to our country and being a part of the Fairfax family. Our demographics in Fairfax County, our numbers at this point are remaining constant in terms of our demographics. We're about 39% white students, 26% Hispanic, 19% Asian, 10% African American, and 6% identify as two or more races. Our economically disadvantaged, as we shared with you last year, as part of a new Medicaid direct certification for free meals, we've seen an uptick in the number of our students being designated as economically disadvantaged. We'll be looking at the data as it comes in this fall, and honestly, I predict that that trend is going to continue. As much as many people may think of Fairfax as an economically prosperous county, we have a very high cost of living, and we have many people, the inequities in our economy create many households that are struggling to get by. Our English language learners are a big part of our Fairfax County family, and we continue to expect growth with them as well. Many of you know, and we've shared this with the General Assembly of Fairfax, if you just took the number of economically disadvantaged students, you'd have the 7th largest school system in Virginia. You'd have one of the largest school systems as well when you look at our English for speakers of other languages. And we represent a major, major percentage of those kids statewide. We're very happy this year that we have, you guys, a couple of weeks ago, we had all these schools come to receive the Governor's Performance Awards. We received the 2017-2018 Virginia Index of Performance Board of Education Distinguished Achievement Award as a school district, and thought you'd like to see that. So not only our schools, but our district being recognized for its great work. Speaking of great work, one of the things that my predecessor, Dr. Garza, began was something called Project Momentum to deal with schools that were facing state accreditation challenges. I'm proud to tell you that after 4 years, 193 out of 194 of our schools have earned full accreditation from VDOE. About 4 years ago, we had over 24 schools that were not fully accredited, and now we are down to 1. 6 schools have gone from partially to fully accredited. You can see them there. If you go to the next slide, we had 1 FCPS school accredited with conditions, Fort Belvoir Primary, but I'm confident we have new leadership in that building that will help us deal with the achievement issues that school has faced, and we've got a great team with Mark Greenfelder and our OSS, Office of School Support team, helping that school. We had 4 schools exit from intensive status to targeted, so they got better. We had 8 schools exit from targeted status to universal status, which is even better, so real growth. Our focus on equity continues in cultural responsiveness. Since August, we've had our leadership conference for 2 straight years. Dr. Pedro Noguera has come. We had our first annual Equity Institute. We had teams from every school come, and Dr. Shariki Holly came and did an outstanding job talking about how to bring an equity lens to work in our classroom and schools. I thank many board members for attending that as well. Our Equity Leads kickoff, we put an equity liaison in every school and in every department in our school system, and we've started training with them. We've created for the first time in Fairfax County Public Schools a family and student ombudsman. It started August 1st, and we want parents in the community to know that the ombudsman represents an impartial person who's there to listen and help parents solve problems and navigate Fairfax County Public Schools. And we're looking forward to that work this year. We have a multicultural curriculum and resource position. We are going to have people look at our curriculum and see how it can be more inclusive for our students and for our teachers who teach our students. And we have an educational specialist for equity supporting our schools in every one of our regions. That's just what we've done since August. For the rest of the year, we're going to start with cultural proficiency cohorts of employees and teachers getting training in culturally responsive instruction. We reached out to Harvard. We sent a few people, including our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Francis Ivy, to lead a team, and we're looking at bringing, instead of sending people on travel to Harvard, that bring Harvard here to partner shoulder to shoulder with us for some additional leadership around equity. We've got the Global Classroom Research Project in partnership with George Mason that we're planning to do. We're going to be doing work on equity in each school and office in March, some systematic, system-wide PD, not just school-based PD. I mentioned the K-12 curriculum review that we're beginning. We have the position, and that person's going to start going through our curriculum to see what's missing, to see the stories of students that may be missing in the work. And we'll be doing micro videos. Yes, that is a word, micro videos, 10 seconds or less, but little mini videos to sort of get out to our folks and continue to educate our own staff on raising awareness around culturally responsive practices. Many of you know, over the summer, for the first time ever, we brought to this board the SRO MOU. It had been signed in the past with the superintendent, but we had not elevated it for board review, and your leadership and working with the County Board of Supervisors and the County Executive Brian Hill, and especially the Chief of Police Ed Rossler, we've signed a new MOU that recognizes that safety of students and staff's our top priority. But this MOU clearly clarifies the role of the SROs in our middle and high schools. We have 51 of those officers in our middle, high, and secondary schools. They're an important part of our overall security plan, but this MOU clearly outlines in detail the principle that SROs are not to be involved in determining student discipline under our student rights and responsibilities. Speaking of SR&R, we've updated dress code language to include with board leadership on this to say that discussions about violations will be held in private. We've removed gender-specific language in the dress code. We've also made it clear that possession or use of a smoking and vaping device is part of disruptive and inappropriate behavior, making clear expectations around that. And we've added language around good citizenship and social media use. Food and nutrition, I'm so proud, and many of you have gotten to interact with both Lee Burden, our new Assistant Superintendent for Financial Services, and Rodney Taylor, who was new a few years ago, but now is really a veteran member of the Fairfax family, on all the initiatives with food and nutrition. We've started Farm to School. Just in the last month or so, we have started serving schools with locally sourced produce from Arcadia Farm and Frying Pan Farm. And Farm to School Week is next week, October 1st through the 5th. Over the last 2 years, we've expanded salad bars to 54 elementary schools. We're going to add another 29 elementary schools this year. And it is my plan, working with Rodney and Lee, to have a salad bar in every elementary school by June 2021, if not sooner. We have 120,000 no-cost super snack meals that we've done for after-school programs. We've seen breakfast participation increase by 3,500 meals, and we have breakfast in the classroom at 37 schools. We have the summer feeds that we did this summer that served over 200,000 participants. And this year, for the first time, we have 19 schools participating in the community eligibility provision that allows free breakfast and lunch for every kid in the school. No stigma about which kids are free reduced lunch and which are not. And very excited about that. We actually are working to make sure that those folks don't even have to do applications for free and reduced lunch meals, though right now we're continuing to encourage parents to do that as we get into this new program. Human resources, we hired almost 2,000 teachers. This includes new hires and rehires. We had over 7,000 applicants. We hired 15 principals, 24 assistant principals. We had 86 instructional vacancies when we opened school. That's 86 too many, but I'll remind the board that over 2 years ago there were 200 vacancies when school opened. For those of you who I know like data, currently we have 59 vacancies still remaining. 24 are elementary classroom teachers and 21 are special ed. There is a teacher shortage in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you may know that the biggest shortage in our area here in Northern Virginia is among special ed. So we've got to continue to do work to bring those folks in, and ultimately I hope that we can start to pioneer new ways that we look at how we bring in teachers to have those skill sets to be able to work with kids with special needs. We're going to continue to do everything we can to intensify our recruitment, and of course you're going to be hearing part of the way that we recruit is through a budget that last year, for the first time since 1995, was fully funded thanks to this board's leadership, working collaboratively with the Board of Supervisors. We are going to continue this year to take this board's direction and focus on employee compensation so that we have our teachers completely aligned with 100% to the market compensation at every level for all of our teachers so that we can have the premier workforce that the FCPS strategic plan envisions. We're going to continue making investments in our teacher using a multi-year strategy to align salaries. But hint, wait for it, we're not going to wait more and more years to get our teachers to the market. We're going to get there now. Our new non-teacher salary scales that we introduced last year in the budget for school-based administrators and office staff, custodians, psychologists, social workers, and central office were implemented. And thanks to your leadership, additional compensation for parent liaisons. Also in the budget, we had steps adjusted for classroom instructional support scale and food service pay scale, bringing all of our contracted employees to the hourly living wage of $14.50. We provided a step increase for employees grandfathered, and we had a one-time bonus for employees who were not receiving a salary increase in last year's budget and will be paid in November this year. We still have progress to make in the area of employee pay, and we will continue to work on pay equity for our employees. They are the secret sauce here in Fairfax County, and we need to continue to invest in them. For transportation, you know, for those of you who've heard this each year, we have one of the largest bus fleets in the country. Thanks to the leadership of Francine Furby and Jeff Plattenberg, with over 1,600 school buses, 142,000 eligible riders, 25 million student bus rides a year. We have over 17,000 bus stops and over 6,000 routes for our buses. We're continuing to exercise the late bus notification so parents can access a website when a bus is more than 15 minutes late. So we really work to create efficiencies and customer service in those areas. Capital investment, we are constructing over 1.8 million square feet. That's worth $420 million. We're beginning construction on 650,000 square feet this year. That totals a price tag of $188 million, and we're designing 1.4 million square feet of schools with the value of over $446 million. We've eliminated this past year more than 46, Mr. Moon, temporary classrooms, and we have much more to do, we know, but we are moving in the right direction. I want to remind this community that our total square footage of our buildings represents the size of 4 Pentagons. An absolute tremendous amount of space, and we need to continue. And with your leadership this past year and working with the Board of Supervisors, we received $25 million more in our CIP for the first time in over 15 years to accelerate the capital investment that we're talking about. Many of you know we have capital improvement projects underway this year. You can see the list of elementary school renovations that are going on, middle and high school renovations. And yes, people like pictures. This is only a sample. We had a big debate among staff, but here are a few: White Oaks, Bellevue, Mount Vernon Woods Elementary, Annandale Terrace, and Clearview, getting some beautiful improvemements. You can see it too. In the future, one day in Northwest, we'll have a new elementary school, but you can see Rocky Run, Langston Hughes, Herndon, and Oakton. Herndon and Oakton are really just getting started, and we appreciate those communities' patience. It's hard to go through, having been a principal here in Fairfax County when it was undergoing a renovation. It is a lot to ask of our community and our students, but those communities have really stepped up to work with us as we've done all that construction. And the end result is going to be beautiful new schools for students, staff, and for our community. We see capital improvement going on too at Forestville Elementary, Waynewood, and Cherry Run. We're excited about that. We have 173 Energy Star certified schools, more than any other school system in the country. Not just in the Commonwealth, Mr. Plattenberg, the country. Capital improvement continues too at Langley High. We've just finished a wonderful project there. West Springfield, still working on it, but boy, it's coming along in Holland Meadows. We have new turf fields that are coming, and we really appreciate the work that we've done with the county on the turf task force. We're going to continue to do that collaboration to drive continued capital improvement. Part of any learning organization is great professional learning and development. We've had our academy courses, our leadership conferences. You can read all the things. Great Beginning Summer Institute. We're going to have other sessions in the fall, but we've had some board individual conversations. For the first time this year, we redesigned it with a special track for our special education teachers. They got their own design training as new teachers because we've realized that special ed teachers, they're harder to retain. They're coming in feeling challenged by what they're asked to do in their job, and the response to our special ed teachers hired this year for this Great Beginnings program has been extraordinary. And I thank Kathleen Waltz and Francisco Duran for their leadership in making it happen. We've got in the Advanced Academic Summer Institutes, the new Equity Institute. You can see all of the learning and development. A learning organization like Fairfax County must continue to accelerate professional learning and development. And soon, this year, you will see a completely revamped professional development plan aligned to our strategic plan, specifically to the goals of the plan, and it will be coming to you all too soon. Or maybe for some of you, not soon enough. For summer programming, 19,000 kids served in wonderful programs: elementary and middle school intervention, young scholars, early Head Start. We did credit recovery at high school. Thomas Jefferson has a program. We had online campus. We had ESY for our special ed kids. And of course, we have some long-standing enrichment institutes for STEM and the arts and tech adventure. And it was countless volunteers and more than 800 teachers and staff supporting those programs this summer. Speaking of staff, let me talk a little bit about what our technology staff have been doing for enhancements. So a couple of new things. We have new same sign-on for math online digital resources. Sometimes you get new resources, but you got to go sign in all over again. And how many of you feel like you got 8 passwords to get into one thing? So now we're creating one sign-in to get straight to those digital resources. And that's a big, big help to get our teachers to not have to jump through so many hoops. We have a revised internet content filtering. It's going to provide flexibility for schools to control problem sites that may need to be blocked at their schools. And this new content filtering will not only allow filtering at the school, but it will allow for filtering of FCPS devices that go home with students. The filter will still be able to be used while they are at home, no matter what network the kid is on. How about that? Free and reduced lunch application. We've taken a paper and pencil process, and listen, I've worked with Mary Beth Lufglass now for over 15 years, and I know that paper and pencil is not her friend, and she is helping change the culture in this system to a paper-free environment, and that's going further with our free and reduced lunch application going to an online process, and I appreciate her leadership in doing that as well. Maybe one day I will bring this presentation to you without paper copies, Mary Beth, but not today. Also with information technology, we have Blackboard Ally. This is a neat thing that helps create accessible materials for students with disabilities. It helps them evaluate posted materials and how it can be more easily provided to kids with disabilities. We also have a delegator application that helps schools have more control over assigning what teachers have access to what kind of programs. Trying to keep track of that can be crazy, and schools really have the flexibility to give teachers control access to more applications and sites. Things like Dreambox or QThink, Origo, MathSpace. And we continue to work with EDSL. That was something I knew about as a young teacher. We really developed our own decades before others were doing data, and we've used this platform to upgrade for our standards of accreditation. We're now doing our own forecasting based on the new standards of accreditation so that schools can get an idea of what it looks like we'll do with our SOL performance or on-time graduation, and even monitor chronic absenteeism, which is a new state indicator that all school systems in Virginia will be asked to look at. Very excited about that. Speaking about IT, again, look, we are supporting over 19,000 devices to kids at FCPS on schools, and we're continuing to do training as we project a rollout of FCPS on, subject to board approval, and we know we have additional work sessions coming up around that topic for you. And we know how much our technology staff do to support our technology in schools. One thing I'm particularly proud of is Elizabeth Murphy and her leadership of the foundation. At the superintendent luncheon for the first ever luncheon sponsored by the foundation, I shared with the business community that FCPS is open for business, and the business community has responded. We saw a 42% increase in giving by the business community to the foundation last year over the year before. We are open for business and for business partnerships here in Fairfax County. The foundation started for the first time ever a teacher grants program and awarded over $45,000 in grants for 28 work-based learning projects that accelerate our work around kids in need, employee recognition, and Virginia Star, and work around Portrait of a Graduate Opportunity. So you're going to see that teacher grant program expand in the years ahead. Much of this money came from our State of Education luncheon that was at the Hilton, I think, last year. And this year, mark your calendar for Tuesday, November 27th at the Fairview Marriott. We are going to have a wonderful, wonderful second luncheon, and the new CEO of Inova will be there as the guest keynote speaker. We're going to continue the focus areas as I shared about kids in need, where we really distribute supplies, recognizing outstanding employees, and our Virginia Star, which gives technology to kids and families at home. Mental health and wellness is a big conversation topic. It was discussed tonight. This is our 5th annual conference on mental health and wellness. I want to thank Teresa Johnson and her staff for their leadership. It gets better and better every year. It's at Fairfax High School on this Saturday from 8 a.m. to 1:30, admissions free, and our keynote is Dr. Amy Presworski, who's the Associate Professor of Psychology at Case Western Reserve. There'll be breakout sessions, resource tables. I want to remind the community tonight of our crisis text. Any student in need of text should text 85511. Mr. Tignor, if you'll share that out with your colleagues too at the SAC, I would appreciate it. We know that that is so important, and for this coming conference, we have invited Our Minds Matter Teen Summit. So we'll have a portion of the conference focused on activities and sessions geared to their needs. So we really hope not just parents, but families will come out and be a part of learning about mental health and wellness. We do need to broaden this conversation beyond just our parents and staff to the students themselves. We'll be continuing to update the youth survey results on our public website, and it will correspond to the just released 2017-2018 data that came up. Many of you know I finished the leadership conference with discussion about the Book of Joy. I think Dr. Zulaga was telling me a group of custodians have actually picked the Book of Joy as a book study project at one of the schools. So boy, oh boy, I mean, when you put that out there. But how do we live a life of joy in the face of adversity? We have real challenges in our school system every day and in our country. But every moment is a gift, and the Book of Joy is about the power of choosing our attitude in the face of adversity. And it's really about our ability to reframe situations more positively, to experience gratitude, grace. Grace means favor, and it means asking for favor and asking for grace. And it also means choosing each and every day in every interaction we have, whether it's here at the board dais, in my individual conversations with you or with staff or with our community and with students, that we show the dignity and grace and professionalism that is a hallmark of Fairfax County Public Schools. My bottom line remains, as superintendent of this system, joy, love, trust, and support for everyone every day. It's an honor to serve as your superintendent, and it is an honor to report on this 2018 opening of schools. Thank you.
We have a couple of board members who have some questions. I would like to start with Ms. Palchik.
Thank you, and I appreciate the very thorough report. Excellent start to the year to you and staff and all of our teachers and educators. I just wanted to ask a couple of very quick questions.
Okay.
I'm especially really excited about the work that Rodney Taylor and his team continue to do, and wanted to share that at one of the few live back-to-school nights at Freedom Hill, the manager stood up to explain the policy changes that students would no longer be told in the lunch line that they did not have money on their account, that letters would be sent home to their parents instead, and that they would be allowed, I believe, up to 10 meals, even if they did not have money in their accounts. And the whole auditorium got a standing ovation applause, so I just wanted to commend you and your staff. Mr. Taylor wanted to make sure that this is our new policy county-wide. Is that correct?
You know, Lee, that's correct,
So that's excellent news. Thank you. Everyone there was very pleased to hear that, so I really appreciate that. The other small question, I think you did allude to it a little bit, is I love the community eligibility schools that are doing it school-wide. I know there was some conversation of, will that mean that we are not getting the information on students who are eligible for free and reduced meals, what that means for them, for programs?
Right, we're working through that. Several school districts in Virginia have adopted the community eligibility provision. There are tight standards for the schools that qualify, and it is based on the amount of FRM that those schools have. And we're working with the state and with other school districts to make sure that we continue to get the data that we need that impact other programs beyond our food and nutrition programs.
Yeah, that's my concern. Could we get an update when we do have clarity on that? Because I know that both for funding, for school staffing support, all of those, I just want to make sure there's not a unintended consequence to that really excellent program. And then my other question was around, around the programs with the food nutrition. I don't know if you have an update. A while ago, Mr. Taylor had also mentioned that they were starting to try rotisserie chicken grilling at some schools as a pilot with an effort to expand it. Do we know if the results of that?
Well, Marty Smith here. We do have some rotisserie chicken kitchens going, I know most specifically at Annandale, and we actually get fresh rotisserie chickens at Gatehouse every day delivered from Annandale High School, so, and they're very delicious and tasty.
And I appreciate that, and I'm glad you're eating that. I'd like the students to have more access to that as well, Mr. Smith. So I guess my question is, and I love that we're moving forward with the elementary schools. I know the kids are really excited as they get rolled out and having more farms on board. If we could get updates at some point on middle school, high school programs and where we are in trying to expand and implement those. But just so much great work happening. Really appreciate it. I know we're a huge system, and the fact that so much goes so well at the beginning of the year is just a true testament to you and your staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palchik. Ms. McLaughlin?
Dr. Brabrand, in your spirit of joy, which, by the way, my sister gave our family, that is a fantastic book. And
Good.
one we actually, I think, would be great for the board to read and make it as part of our retreat. So in the spirit of GLOWs,
okay.
I want to first say that I deeply appreciate the tremendous work that has been accomplished this year by your Department of Transportation. Mr. Plattenberg in particular, this was such a smooth opening that I did not receive a single email with distress about busing, and to have one of the largest fleets in the country. I just think, again, kudos to you and your staff. It is a Herculean effort, and it's appreciated by so many of us about what that is required, and to facilities as well. You and your staff have been remarkably responsive to the few issues that have come to my attention, and your professionalism and attentiveness in serving our schools has made a big difference, and it's appreciated. I also want to give kudos out to Mark Greenfelder. Mark Greenfelder on his Project Momentum, as you spotlighted. Mark Greenfelder has really, I think, demonstrated the power of data-driven action in this division. And I really enjoyed meeting with him and talking about my Braddock schools, but also seeing the success across the county as a whole, and you're spotlighting it tonight with the success of accreditation for our schools. Can't be understated. And then I also wanted to give a GLOW that you didn't include, but I think it's one of the most exciting things about our opening of schools, and that's our new ombudsman, the position that's being held by Armando Perry. If that isn't one of the most important examples of your leadership joining our system, and within a year, recognizing the value of the ombudsman position to helping our students and families. And as I shared with you, I hope to look at the growth of that for it serving our employees well, for just being a positive way for connecting with those who want and need assistance with our system. So those are several GLOWs I really wanted to touch on. I did want to just spotlight a few areas of concern with our opening of schools as we go forward. In the SR&R, where the addition was to add vaping to our inappropriate disruptive behavior, this is a national problem. It's one that the board and you and your team are extremely mindful of, and I'm thankful for our community for bringing it to our attention. But I cannot emphasize that this is about education, not simply discipline. And I really want to make sure that that is the lens and the mindset that we approach with vaping. It's not enough to just go to what suspensions will come out of it. It's really partnering with our kids and our families to understand the highly addictive nature of vaping and how we can help our families identify where the vaping's happening. I just know anecdotally of several families, and it is a very serious problem, but I don't want this being driven underground. I also want to spotlight about special education teachers. You mentioned that it's wonderful, the professional development and the supports that our special education teachers are receiving, but I would share with you from feedback I've gotten from veteran special education teachers, it's as important that we provide training and support to our assistant principals and our principals who are charged with evaluating these teachers because it is a highly specialized style of education. And if our principals and assistant principals don't have that knowledge and expertise, when they're tasked with the important role of evaluating these special education teachers, they may unknowingly be, struggling to evaluate them and in ways that those teachers are essentially downgraded being to mindset of joy, because all of the brain research has shown that this notion of a positive mental attitude, the brain basically gets hardwired. And all of us as board members, we're so passionate, and it's very easy for us to always look at how we're focusing on the continuous improvement model, but sometimes it can lend itself to looking at the shortcomings and not still recognizing that from a place of excitement for who we are as a school division, and then how do we grow and get better. So that's my commitment to you on the opening of schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. Mr. Moon, followed by Ms. Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for the excellent presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moon.
I do have a couple of questions for clarification, and so a couple of comments on a couple of slides. This is the very first slide, right after the cover slide, where it says 6.6% is a non-school-based staff, and non-school-based staff, please correct me if I'm wrong, includes bus drivers and all the maintenance people. And actually, when we talk about, some people might think that non-school based might be all administrators, and they are not.
Let me see,
It's
Mr.
Moon.
Moon.
Less than 2%, correct? About 1.6 or so.
Let me, I think our staff's trying to pull that number.
Okay, then I'll go to the next one.
Okay.
I'll go to the next one. And next one is my printout does not have a page number, but I'm going to go to something that Dr. Sloan, Presidio, could probably answer.
Oh, he can answer it. I'm sure he can, whatever it is.
Because I think I alerted him earlier today.
Oh, well, that's good.
That a number of students in English, that's been sort of like categorized as English speakers of other languages being close to 54,000, looking at the bar graph. That includes those who graduated, exited from ESOL classes, right? Correct?
That's correct. That number includes the students that are still in monitoring status.
Monitoring stage.
So there is a separate category of students that are former English learners. This number includes the students that are still in monitoring status for a 2-year period of
But
time.
they're not necessarily in ESOL classes.
They're not receiving ESOL
The number of
services,
students in
classes.
ESOL classes more like 36,000.
That's correct.
Okay, that was for the clarification. Just a couple of comments. Probably my first comment might also come with a question. That I appreciate the fact that we've been able to reduce the number of trailers by 46. It's a progress, but we do still have more than 800 trailers actively being used for classroom instruction, Mr. Plattenberg?
Yes, that's correct, and we had given a report, and you'll see it in the CIP.
If I just divide 800 by 46, 16, 17, another 16, 17 years. I don't think I can wait that long.
Mr. Moon, we're really proud of the past 5 years. We've reduced it by 200 total.
Okay.
So we are accelerating that pace. The superintendent's given us strict direction, and we're doing everything within our power to go ahead and eliminate as many as we possibly can. And again, you'll see that in the CIP as we present.
Okay, thank you. You think we can get all, almost all trailers eliminated within the next 5 years, you think?
My goal is to eliminate all the trailers, Mr. Moon.
But when? When is the question?
I understand.
Is that going to be before my funeral or what?
Yeah, I'm hoping it's during my tenure.
I don't know when you will be retiring.
I hope not anytime soon, Mr. Minto.
Okay,
But
all right.
with all sincerity, Mr. Moon, I know you've made a ardent point, as well as other board members, about the need to have our students in bricks and mortar. And when you look at about the size of, I know Arlington County's grown to about 28,000 students now, but when you look at the approximate size of our neighboring school division that we have in trailers, it certainly is something that, with the addition of the $25 million, with the removal of the infrastructure funds that were the maintenance funds of 13.2, we're making strides in that endeavor, but we certainly have a long way to go. Okay. So I will try to get you an approach as to when we do it, but there are so many variables that impact it. When we move to full-day kindergarten, it causes trailers. When we add different programs, if we look at early childhood and the capacity needs, it adds trailers. That's the only reason why I can't give you an exacting number.
Thank you,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Plumper. I know that I've been pestering you. I do that every time, every opportunity that I have, and I do enjoy doing that. You know that.
And you do it well.
Thank you. And this is just a comment on the summer feast program. I actually took opportunities to go to Paul Middle School a couple of times and purchased 4 sandwiches. First time 2 for myself, and second time I took my partner with me to just show up to him that only at the price of $2 you can have a really great lunch. And he agreed, and that's an excellent program. If any of my school board colleagues haven't been there yet, yes, okay, good. Next summer, please go. Thank you. So let's go back to my very first question. Does Ms. Burden have an answer to that?
Yes, the non-school-based staff basically includes leadership team, technicians, analysts, coordinators, directors, transportation, trades, people basically administrative that are not located in a school.
Bus drivers
are not included, because bus drivers are not included, parent liaisons that are hourly are not included, and bus attendants are not included because they are not FTEs, and so they're not included in these numbers at all.
So I'm trying to get this one. So 6.6%. 6.6%, that is close to how many positions?
1,500.
1,500 positions. But they are not necessarily central administrative staff members, are they?
No, I mean, there's tradespeople, there's, central office support staff, transportation that's centrally budgeted, not the bus drivers, but the administrative piece of it.
So where do you include the bus drivers? Bus drivers are not counted anywhere?
They are not accounted for.
Oh, I see it. That's a piece of information.
Below the line.
They are below the line. I just wanted to see, wanted to have a better, maybe one more line item, what it shows, because we always try to compare our central administration versus maybe other surrounding school districts. That's a comparison point we make.
Right, and those are apple-to-apple comparisons because the other divisions, if you look in the Wavy Guide on the listing of positions that are school-based and non-school-based, all of the other divisions have adhered to our formula so that it's comparable. So even though their bus drivers may be 1.0 FTEs, they put them below the line as well. That way our percentages are truly comparable.
Okay, point that I'm trying to make is this, because the number of central administrative positions that I used to know is much smaller than 6.6% from the budget book. Whether I am wrong about that?
Between 6 and 7? Yes. You think it should be lower than that?
Oh, it should be much lower than that.
No, my experience is that Fairfax generally runs between 6 and 7%, and also has the distinction of having the lowest percentage of non-school-based employees in the metropolitan area.
And I'm proud of the fact that we are, our percentage is the lowest, but my recollection is certainly not 6.6%. So if we could double check that.
We will.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. Ms. Schultz, please.
Madam Chair, I don't know if this is directed to you or to the superintendent. Are we having a work session on this? Because typically we only ask cursory questions at this point.
Correct, we are having a work session.
And is that the next month's Monday work session? The October?
I don't have the agenda in front of me, and so I'll have to get back to you on that.
Right, because it's tricky this time of year because we don't have our enrollment numbers yet.
That's right.
So the asterisk is, the very small asterisk is my biggest question.
Yes, and we don't have September 30th enrollment data yet.
Right.
It's not on here.
So,
And can I clarify, I made a mistake. We don't have a work session scheduled on this, but if there's a need for it, we'll work to getting it on our schedule.
I do think the status of where we are as a system in terms of special education hires, total students, where the students are. And it may not be an immediate need because I think we're going to have to get a handle on where the numbers are. But Dr. Brabrand, the big question always is, we grow and we grow and we grow, but where are we growing? And the essence of where the need is, and bless you, becomes to me on a strategic governing money planning direction one of the most critical issues.
Yes.
The prediction of where we are. Yep. Mr. Blattenberg, I think this is 7 years running, I'm going to make the speech. Not only where we think we're going, but then checking our work. Have we hit the number that we've said?
Right.
I think it's about transparency.
Sure.
Our funding ask to the Board of Supervisors is based on what we say our student population is going to be. But the critical issue is that if we're growing and we hit, say we hit 190,000 students with our September enrollment, where did we get the students? Where did the students come? And that data dive, that data analysis of where we trend and where we're predicting growth. And it is one of the things we're talking about in the newly constituted Comprehensive Planning and Development Committee. For example, on a planning purpose, Paul VI High School is going to be closing in 2 years.
Right.
Are we watching our high school enrollment numbers? Are the contributions to our growth largely in the high school area? There is a huge jump between our 8th grade and our 9th grade years. So things like the dive, and it's not that I would expect it now,
right.
But the not just the pure numbers, what do they mean?
Sure.
What's the analysis behind them?
We could do that.
And what does that trend portend for us in terms of governing and planning? I do want to touch on one thing that you were talking about, and you hinted at it, but this is a little bit where I want to do just a slightly expanded question. On the issue of the free and reduced meals and the fact that we became at a tipping point with the way that we're offering it or the way the federal government is doing it. Can you just explain, because really what has happened is that you could have a school that has a certain percentage of students who are defined as free and reduced meal or economically disadvantaged. And what has happened is that now the whole school will get
That's correct.
Get a free meal. Can you just explain that part a little bit?
Well, I mean, yes, it's new for Fairfax. It's Rodney's leadership that made it happen. As you may know, Governor McAuliffe and First Lady McAuliffe made the issue around using the community eligibility provision a major part of their administration. And school divisions, including the one I was in before I came back, we realized we were eligible for the criteria, as are these 19 schools, and anyone in those schools can access the breakfast and lunch program at no charge. It takes away, it has, in theory, the ability to take away all of the paperwork, and in many cases lower the barrier or social stigmas around who's getting school lunch and who's not. The other thing it does is it increases breakfast participation and lunch participation rates among all kids. That's what's been seen in other school divisions. So in some sense, more kids begin to access the lunch program than ever before. So we could bring some more information about that and have Rodney come.
Just on that specific question, but is that based on a total percentage of the student population being identified?
Yes.
And then once we reach, do you know what that percentage is?
Not off the top of my head. Do you, Lee? I don't remember. It's a pretty high number. It's only 19 of our schools. It's a pretty high number. Again, I don't remember.
And if they get then does it count for both? Do they get the free breakfast and the free lunch? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for that. And then on the, I wish I had as glowing news as Ms. McLaughlin, who has stepped away from the table. I do have, continue to have my equity of a different sort issues around the opening of schools and bus transportation.
Okay.
And I particularly find that in certain segments of the Springfield district, predictably, we find students at the beginning of the year who are not only like 3 and 4 to a seat, but standing in the aisles, sitting in the aisles, literally left behind because they can't squeeze another student on. And I know that predicting students is difficult. I know that transportation is difficult, but it has to be the thing on the prediction. And this is, I keep getting back to the data informing us so that we can be strategic with the delivery of our services. It just can't happen. It can't happen that we are surprised by the number of children who show up on the first day of school or the first week of school or the first 2 weeks of school. And whatever the board can do or whatever direction you need to help direct that we understand more predictably where students are, particularly elementary age students. We live in a community that has the worst traffic in the nation, largely many to working parents. And if we've said we're providing a bus, we have to provide a bus, and we have to provide a bus safely. And so this all gets back to showing our work. So I look forward to a deeper discussion on many of these things offline, but I appreciate the initial opening schools report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Ms. Strauss, followed by Ms. Hines.
Very quickly, thank you very much for the report, and I like your closing bottom line. Joy, love, trust, and support for everyone every day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss.
My only question is, again, the report, our enrollment growth, and it's September 30. When, and I know that's a Mary Beth Lifglass question, when do we actually get the numbers school by school?
Typically around October 10th.
October 10th, okay, because clearly Silverline and a number of my schools are growing dramatically, but we're expecting that, but we're just watching those numbers.
And we can work on getting that you in the Brabrand briefing and then follow it up if you want like an additional work session, to do deeper dive analysis.
The way they appear in each school's website tracker, that is the most helpful, and that's because then we can actually
Yeah, Mary Beth, is that October 10th when she says it appears in the school's website tracker? Is it?
Yeah, so when I send you guys out an email every month and tell you that it's available, the day it's available.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And
I have to
additionally, all of that information becomes a part of our whole forum.
Exactly.
With the work sessions with the CIP and all the deeper dive and by the school and the things that Ms. Schultz and also what Ms. Strauss are saying are all part of that CIP work session process that we build up for the whole winter, for the fall.
Right. Great. Well, thank you very much. I've already started meeting with the McLean High School students in their newspaper. They're wonderful writers. And we have an unusually large freshman class, but we are expecting this, and it's just monitoring it and knowing for planning purposes. So
No, we
October 10th,
recognize,
should
I will say, I've had some conversations with the county executive. I know many in the community are waiting to hear about potential announcements about companies in Fairfax County, and we have to be prepared that the growth we have had may actually increase depending on what happens, and we've got to start taking proactive action. But we'll be glad to give you the updates, and again, we're just a week away. Our projection, remember, was for an increase in students. So the question is, did we meet that increase? Did we come in slightly less? Slightly more? And of course, as Ms. Schultz said, we want to be absolutely as accurate as possible. And where we weren't, what's behind the discrepancy? We've spent a lot of time, I know, over the last several years trying to get as accurate as we can around the projections of where kids and families will be. And we'll be glad to give you an update.
Yeah, it's lumpy, and that's to be expected. The big number is usually right on, but then it's trying to figure out classroom by classroom, school by school. So I understand that. I will just simply look forward to those October numbers, because that just helps us to
Thank you, Ms. Strauss.
to project planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss. Mr. Tigner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a few quick questions as well as a great update and great presentation. The first one, you mentioned that safety of students and staff is top priority. And I had some concerns brought to me by students of Oakton about all the trailers they have outside currently while their school is being remodeled, and about every single time classes switch. There are about 100 students who've got to walk in a mob from the trailers back into the school. And I've heard that they're taking some measures to make sure an admin is out there at all times, and stuff like that. But with all these different renovations that you showed us, are you taking measures to make sure that level of security, if not more, is provided to these students, that they do feel safe?
Well, we want all of our students to feel safe, and we do have a significant number of trailers, and we have had for many years, and we've been a school system that has taken great pride in the work of our safety and security record, even with the number of trailers that we've had. That said, when you have a renovation in particular, and you really have a clump of trailers farther away from the school, we have been working with the administration around having the appropriate presence when kids are coming in and out. I don't know the particulars about Oakton, and maybe Mr. Plattenberg, you could speak a little bit to that if there's some other things. I know that we've done in some other sites, but I'm just not sure about Oakton.
Yes, sir. Dr. Brabrand, you're exactly right. What we talked about is in each of the school sites that we have, we not only do an assessment of the egress patterns for the students and student flow, but we have a number of different other agencies that actually take a look at that. We work with the fire marshal, we work with the building code enforcement folks of Fairfax County, and we work with our own security teams to make sure that we in fact have the most appropriate space and swing space that we possibly can do. Unfortunately, because we don't have vacancies where we can just move the entire school, we do have to do it through these trailers, and I don't know exactly what they've named it at Oakton. I know in West Springfield, the same concerns came up at the beginning of that. People got a little more familiar with it as it went through the first year. They called that Sparta. And we just constantly look at our safety and security for that. We have an outside third-party individual who comes in on an OSHA standpoint, and we also have our own internal security folks that take a look at it.
Mr. Tigner, what I would ask you to do, have those kids reach out to Douglas Tyson, our regional assistant superintendent, and perhaps he can come over and walk the school with the principal and listen and talk to those kids and see if there's some things we can bring back specifically for that school, that community.
Okay, awesome. Also, the main reason why I brought that up is I know at our school, currently there's a push for not allowing students to take the outside stairwells between floors. It's not been announced to the students, but if I knock on an outside door and I took an outside stairwell, if a teacher sees it, they won't open it and they'll ask me to go into a main entrance. And I feel as if that is a lot more secure than walking to a trailer that is a couple hundred feet from campus. But that is allowed and sanctioned a couple times a day for those students, whereas unannounced to the student body, at least at our school, we can't take these outside stairwells.
Let me check into that with our Safety and Security Specialist Director, Tom Vaccarello, and we can get back to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A couple other small questions, just a comment too. There are some concerns brought up about school buses and students not fitting on them and the amount of students, but also the size of the students is a lot of times overlooked. I'm a very tall person. I cannot fit in a school bus seat with 2 people. My knees will not fit. I actually have to sit sideways. So if you consider some of these seats, there's 2 students can fit on them, and even in some cases I heard 3, right? I'm the only person who can fit in one of these seats. And sometimes even when I go on to a sports game, and a lot of students at school have addressed this, a football game with all your equipment on the bus as well, it gets very crammed. So that's just a concern I'd like to bring up.
That's an excellent concern. If I can just add a comment to that. The 3 a seat is based not on the secondary size, because you're absolutely correct. I mean, and we've also found in middle schools now, students are a little more developed, I guess, than they had been back when I was in middle school. Let's just put it that way. So for that purpose, we do take that into account, and that is some of the reasons why, as Ms. Schultz mentioned, at the early part of the year, we got to do a better job than we have in the past. We've got an excellent track record of adjusting when we first do. We have ratios and calculations that are part of the best practices across the country. But we found even this year some of the issues that you mentioned. So we're keenly aware and definitely looking into that.
Thank you. And sort of a final thing, which in a way it goes together, the SR&R updates. I thought that information was extremely valuable, and I've actually know of students so far this year who have been addressed in public about violations to dress code. And I don't think, or at least I don't feel from the responses I've gotten from students, that those have been made aware to those students that that is not allowed anymore.
Okay.
Or at least made clear enough.
I'll be glad to follow up with principals about that.
Awesome, thank you. And the last one is, what is good citizenship and good social media use? What is that quantified as? Because that was mentioned as sort of an update to SR&R. What is good social media use?
You know, we have that information. Dr. Presidio, I'm thinking of the social media guidelines. John, we put them out for employees, and I don't know what part of that we did with kids. Do either of you remember for the student piece?
Yeah, I think what we ended up doing was condensing a little bit of that information that was provided to employees to include in the SR&R, basic do's and don'ts on social media. And just providing some basic guidance.
But you know what, if you think that's something that we need to get out more specifically to students beyond just the general language, and it would be helpful to share, we can work on doing that. Either at SAC or through another way I can talk with administration about how to get out. You're trying to get clear parameters for students to know, hey, yes, that's okay, no, that's not.
Yes, and not just because a lot of times when these sort of presentations are given to students, you're like, okay, well, the teacher's telling me what to do with my phone and social media. It's not valued as much. But instead, providing that, so what? Well, hey, colleges look at this, so you might attend your college, right? Stuff like that is sort of what really will make that student maybe remember that good practice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tigner. Ms. Evans?
Thank you very much. Dr. Brabrand, I want to congratulate you on an excellent opening of schools report. This is very well done, gives us a great overview of how we have started this school year. A lot of excellent news in here, and I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we need to be especially proud of as a school system, as a school board, and the superintendent and your entire team. Wonderful news on the hiring. Yes, we would love to have our vacancies down to 0 at the beginning of the school year, but we have made such strides in the last couple of years. So kudos to you and your team on that. Project Momentum has been a tremendous success. When you just, aside from the figures that we're seeing, we also see the impact in the schools and with the students and in the classroom. And that is something, and kudos to all of you, everyone who was involved in that at the central office level, at the school level, parents, students, all those who have been involved in making that such a success.
One thing, Ms. Evans, just to share with this board, we've taken Project Momentum through your support, and we've created Project Momentum teams, or what we call OSS teams, for every region to help support every school this year. The accreditation data is improved, but we still have significant gaps, and in some places, we've even seen slight rollbacks. Special ed remains an area that Fairfax County must do a better job with special ed achievement, also with some of our African American students. We have pockets where those achievement areas are not growing as much as we want them to, and the OSS teams will be in every school through every region, and we're really excited. I will almost call it a frenzy of activity with folks from central office out giving direct help immediately for principals and teachers as they're just starting the first few weeks of school. So we're really ramping it up, and we'll have more to share with you when we do our Project Momentum discussion, but I think it's going to be a big part of helping continue to close the gaps that we have that still remain a part of our strategic plan in Fairfax.
Absolutely, and of course our next big challenge is with chronic absenteeism.
Yes.
And so I know that this wasn't the topic of tonight's conversation, but the Project Momentum team presumably will be working heavily on that issue as well.
As you heard, our IT is going to start having the ability for our schools to monitor the chronic absenteeism through the state indicator. And we're going to need to figure out, I think one of the things, maybe not for tonight, but how do we continue to grow the OSS or Project Momentum mindset around social emotional supports, around attendance, not just the academic piece. But we need to be helping teachers real time with the struggles and challenges they have and not waiting to get back to them. And that's what principals and teachers want, and that's what Project Momentum was doing for a subset of schools. We need to do it for the whole system.
And with the absenteeism, we know there is a connection. So it's not a bad measure to have, but we also know that that's going to be a challenge that we're going to face in terms of accreditation. So I think that's something that we're going to have more conversations in the coming school year. The food and nutrition services, we have come so far on that, and so again, congratulations. The free breakfast program is a tremendous addition. Several of the schools involved are in Mason District. Actually, about a third of them are in Mason District. So that's quite an addition for our school system, and as well as the summer program. And like Mr. Moon, I did go and visit and get my delicious lunch there, and that certainly is something that can impact many children, families in our area. I will add to what Ms. McLaughlin said. The Ombudsman is a tremendous addition to our team, and I think we're going to reap major benefits from that position in terms of parents understanding that this is someone that if they don't know where to go, that's where you go. And I think that will lead to less frustration and on the part of some parents who just don't know where to go for the answers to their questions. So I'm very enthusiastic about that. And of course, the equity work will be critical to basically everything we do. So on that note, I did want to ask just one or two questions, and that's on the statistics up at the top of your presentation. It's on...
I realized we didn't number the pages. I'll do that for next year.
I think it's slide 3. Anyway, where you talk about the number of economically disadvantaged ESOL and special education. And I'm sorry if I missed it, but what kind of growth does that represent? what percentage growth have we seen in the economically disadvantaged ESOL and special education?
We don't have the numbers yet for this year. So last year, I think economically disadvantaged, boy, I'm going to go off the top of my head. I think it was like 7% increase last year.
So are these last year's figures then, as opposed to this year, the projected for this year?
The numbers came from the membership report from last year, so we don't have this year's yet.
So we don't yet have that number. All right. Well,
But what I did say is my feeling is the trend for economically disadvantaged will continue to tick up, but I don't have the number yet.
Okay. And that will come with the September, the end
which
of September figure?
October
Okay.
10th.
Okay, so I will wait to see that. And then I am, of course, pleased to see all the capital improvements, and I hope very soon to see Falls Church High School on that very exciting list. Will we see that next year on our list? 2 years, Mr. Plattenberg? When will we see Falls Church on that list?
Well, you've got the planning that was approved that we're going to go ahead and go in there. So you'll see, we could put it on there, but as you know, after that bond referendum, the next bond referendum is the construction funding for it. But we'll go into much greater detail in the CIP conversation,
right,
and we'll be able to rejoice where Falls Church is at that time in great detail.
You know I had to bring it up.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for an excellent report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Ms. Hines, you stepped away from the table when I called. Do you have any comments?
I know I had my little button up, but then I put it down because everybody's asked my questions and made my comments. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Ms. Hines.
Excellent report. The only thing I would like to do is make sure I can share it with the community.
Yeah, we can get that out.
Okay. I'd like to put it on social media.
John, yeah, Mr. Torrey will take care of that, and we'll be glad to do that.
Okay. Because this is just the kind of thing the community is always asking about.
Okay.
And it's all in one place.
Will do.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Great idea, Ms. Hines. Thank you. I do want to remind my colleagues that we will be having a discussion about resource stewardship on the 15th, the work session, and so some of these issues may come up in that context. Just a couple of comments. Thank you very much for all of your excellent work in this area. A big shout out to Mr. Plattenberg's team and Ms. Furby in particular for the work she has done in addressing some of the bus stop issues in our area. It's greatly appreciated. She certainly has a very practical approach to problem solving, so it's wonderful. One thing that wasn't in the opening of the schools report was any discussion about the wraparound schools, the community school initiative going on in Mount Vernon and Lee. And so I know it's late tonight, you don't have to answer the question now, but I think it is an important area of development, and so we would like to have a status update.
Sure, we can do that. Dr. Duran, I know, has been working very closely with our county colleagues on that, and we can do that for you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. As well as in looking at the work, I very much appreciate the information on the accreditation. It's very helpful. But as you know, there are some concerns about the achievement gap data and where some of our schools have actually backtracked. And so if you could at some point provide us a remediation plan on how we're going to get those trends to turn around.
Sure.
I'd appreciate it. Mr. Moon just signaled to me that he has a quick go back.
Just one quick go back.
Listen, I love this. I didn't expect all these questions. This is great.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. This is just a comment. In answering my own question that I posed earlier, looking at the page 175 of the budget book, 2019, FY19 approved the budget book. I think positions are divided in the budget book between instructional programs and support programs.
Okay.
We have a total over 24,000. Instructional program close to 23,000, and support program about 1,300, which is about 5.3%. And among the 5.3% of 1,300 positions, Central administration is only 70. The others are mostly facilities management and general support. So I just didn't want anybody to think by looking at 6.6 non-school based to think they're all central administration.
Understood. We'll look at doing that, breaking that out a little differently next year so there's not that confusion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Moon.
Thank you, Dr. Brabrand. Would you like to introduce the fiscal forecast?
Yes. Hey, we just finished opening of schools and open schools, and then let's talk about budget, right? But this is a very, very preliminary report. We were going to share it at a work session, but we wanted to really, because we have so many meaty topics before the board, we thought we'd do it tonight. Lee's going to hang over there so she can have access to some of her ancillary materials. But she's going to take you through real high level the fiscal forecast, and I think you're going to see the momentum of the budget year that we had last year continue in this year. We have our challenges, but we're going to continue to have the collaboration with our county and our county executive and board of supervisors, and she can give you an idea where we are very, very early in the budget process. So, Ms. Burden, I know Alice is with you too to be your partner in crime over there, so you guys take it away, and thank you.
And good evening, Madam Chair, members of the school board, Dr. Brabrand. The presentation this evening will provide the fiscal 20 preliminary fiscal forecast for the school operating fund only as compared to the fiscal 19 approved budget. But first, a few caveats that Dr. Brabrand already mentioned these. It is very early for a preliminary forecast. We don't have enrollment projections yet, staff reconciled, revenue numbers. So these numbers reflect preliminary broad estimates and are to illustrate potential revenue and expenditures only. They are not recommendations. Thus, these items might or might not be included in the fiscal 20 superintendent's proposed budget, and the total of the potential expenditures shouldn't be interpreted as a recommended change to the budget. It should also be noted that a lot of these estimates are placeholders. We wanted to include everything that we know about for this early forecast, but some items won't come to you until October, maybe November, but certainly before the superintendent's proposed is presented. So the first thing is the revenue assumptions. The beginning balance, we're assuming a $400,000 increase in the beginning balance, and that comes from the fiscal 18 year end. The county transfer, we're assuming a 3% increase based on information from the county as to what they expect their revenue to be for fiscal 20. Sales tax and state aid, we're expecting about $22 million, and that is based on the governor's biennium budget that was approved last May. Federal funding, we're expecting to be flat. The city of Fairfax up about $900,000. And other revenue, which is basically rebates, fees, facility usage, those kinds of things, about $400,000. And the textbook reserve beginning balance is down 5.6, and that's just the difference between the beginning balance for the textbook reserve between 19 and 20. So that the total projected revenue increase is $80.3 million. This is just a summary of the expenditure assumptions for fiscal 20 projected by category. The required expenditure adjustments are expected to be an increase of $26 million. The salary and FTE increases 80.5. Strategic plan investments and transfers 8.6, and the textbook reserve 2.8 for a total projected expenditure increase of $118 million. And I'll go into more detail later in the presentation about these four items. So that the projected gap, if you look at revenue at $80.3 million and expenditures at $118 million, is $37.7 million. And I feel obliged to mention that this number may look lower than you've seen historically because the county in recent times has not given us a number, even informally, but due to the great collaboration between Dr. Brabrand and Brian Hill, The staffs are working very closely now, and I think they felt very comfortable in letting us know that 3% would be a good number to use for our fiscal forecast. So this number's been, $100 million, $120 million at this first level of the preliminary forecast in previous years, and it's 37.7 now because we do have an assumption for the county revenue. The first category is the required expenditure adjustments. So just to give you some more detail, the enrollment demographic adjustments, we use the fiscal 20 CIP forecast because we don't have new numbers yet. That's an increase of about 514 students. That number will be updated once we get the September 30 enrollment reconciled and then analyzed and projected into the future. The employee benefits and recurring salaries are the cost of the salary steps for the grandfathered employees, as well as employee benefits increases like ERFC. The rate is going from 6.26 to 6.44. FCERS has a rate increase. VRS's rate increase, at least in the biennium budget, is 0. And we're assuming an employee benefit health care increase of 2%. And so all of those items together total $10.8 million. We also have some contractual increases of the $9.3 million. Utilities make up $1.4 million of that. And then we have a number of contractual increases in the departments, major IT projects, bus operations, and other department requirements for a total of $26 million. The next category is salary and FTE increases. And for this preliminary forecast, we have included the teacher salary scale enhancement at $53.5 million, and that is full freight. That assumes that we would move to the final salary schedule that was provided to you all a number of years ago as being our goal in order to reach the market average. We've also included step increases for all those that are eligible at $46.8 million. A market scale adjustment for non-teacher scales of 1%, that's $8.2 million. A BA lane placeholder, you'll be receiving a recommendation from the BA lane work group in October. And again, this is a placeholder in anticipation of that. So we've included it in this early preliminary forecast, although that could change. Other salary increases like substitute rate increases, bonuses for the top of the scale or those that don't get salary increases in fiscal 20, parent liaisons that are working between 20 and 25 hours getting full benefits. All of those have been included in the other salary increases. And then there's base savings, which basically just represents the recurring savings due to turnover in fiscal 19. So the total of salary and benefits and FTEs is $80.5 million. The third category is strategic plan investments and transfers. The first item is FCPS on placeholder at $5.8 million. You've seen this number before, and I'm betting you're going to see it again in October. Again, this is a placeholder because I know that it's out there. I know that it's something that, we're interested in funding, and so to not include that wouldn't be prudent. So, whatever decision is made, we wanted to include it in this very early preliminary forecast. The instructional resources represents a recurring textbook increase of $600,000 and the learning management system of $1 million. FCPS has been using Blackboard as their learning management system since 2001. That contract expires in fiscal 21, and so we have some additional functionality that's desired, and so that increase is expected to be $1 million. And then we have transfers to other funds. We have some decreases in equipment transfers, and that's offset by increases in transfers needed in the ACE fund and FCPS Head Start that total about $1.5 million. So to recap, again, the revenue is expected at $80.3 million. The expenditures, including the one-time textbook reserve of $2.8 million, total $118 million for a projected gap of $37.7. And just a reminder, since it takes up so much of the budget increase and is certainly, something that we've invested in, the 19 approved budget included an investment of 53.1 to continue to accelerate and enhance the teacher salary scales. It's been designed to achieve faster career earnings by providing larger increases at the beginning of one's career, maintaining pay steps and eliminating the hold steps, and to be between the market of 95 and 105% of the comparator salary ranges. The enhancement in the teacher salary scale makes progress towards moving towards the division's competitiveness with surrounding jurisdictions. If you take a look at this next chart, you can see that we have made much progress since 2017. And I guess this school board started it all, so you all get a lot of the credit. This chart shows the investment to the salary scales and market averages for the master's line. The gray line at the bottom of the graph shows the fiscal 16 salary scale prior to any additional investment. The second line from the bottom in red shows the impact of the 17 investment, which was $40 million. The yellow line reflects the investment included in 2018 of $26.6 million, and the blue dotted line is the FCPS scale in fiscal 19 at an investment of $53.1 million. The solid blue line shows the fiscal 2018 market average of the comparator divisions, and the solid dark green line shows the 19 market average of the comparator divisions. So we are still slightly below in this year. Again, funding of $53.1 million was included in the 19 budget, and that's half of the remaining funding required to reach the future teacher salary scale. But even after adding that $53.1 million, we're still only slightly above the fiscal 18 market and slightly below the fiscal 19 market average. So that's why we've opted to include the full $53.5 million in the fiscal 20 fiscal forecast to complete implementation of the teacher salary scales. And finally, to reiterate, this is very early. We don't have enrollment projections, revenue numbers. These numbers will change. That's all I'm certain of.
Thank you, Ms. Burden. That's very helpful. I have Ms. Sternak-Kofax.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you, Alice, for your fine presentation tonight. I do appreciate it. I don't have any questions, particularly at this time, but I do want to tell my colleagues about the process Ms. Strauss and I do plan to use. Prior to the superintendent's proposed budget, we will be asking to meet with you each on, two members of the school board with Lee, Dr. Braybrand, probably Mr. Smith, and I'm not certain what other staff, Lee, you would like to have there with you. And at that point, we will just be answering your further questions you have on this presentation and wanting to hear from you any suggestions you have for where we should be focusing our dollars in the coming year. So we will be arranging those meetings soon, and I will be working with Lee and her team to get them started, and Ms. Strauss as well.
Thank you, Ms. Sternak-Kofax. I have Mr. Moon, followed by Ms. Evans.
Just a couple of questions. Thank you for the presentation. Even though I was gone from the dais, I was watching it from behind. That slide number 5, the projected gap of $37.7 million, how is that number compared to the numbers around the same time in prior years?
Yeah, I touched on this in the presentation. At this stage of the process, we often do not have preliminary county revenue projections, but because of the level of cooperation between Dr. Braybrand and Brian Hill, there's been a greater sharing of information than ever before. And the county has informally shared that the increase should be about 3%. In recent years, at this point in the budget process, you may have seen gap numbers ranging from 98 million to 130 million because no increase in the county transfer would have been assumed at this stage because we just didn't have any information. But again, the county has shared with us that their best estimate right now is about 3%, so we built that into our assumptions. That means an additional $61.5 million in county transfer. Each percentage point is worth $20.5 million, and that coupled with additional state revenue and other small increases leaves us with a gap of 37.7.
So what you seem to be saying is this: had we used flat transfer like a prior years for the fiscal forecast, that gap might have been close to 100 million.
99.2.
992.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So what are some of the plans you are thinking about to find a way to eliminate this gap, meet the gap?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but this is a very early forecast and a number of critical items aren't yet firm. So even though the gap is 37.7 now, that is not the final number by any stretch. It will be something else. It might go up, it might go down, but it will definitely be something else. As far as how we would meet that gap, county or state revenue could go up. We are in the process of analyzing the teacher skill enhancement, which involves anticipating what the comparator divisions might do in fiscal 20. So we could tweak that a little bit because we may be closer to the market in fiscal 20 than we are assuming right now. We could remove the 1% MSA assumption, especially if the county does not include an MSA in its budget. We're already looking for efficiencies and where funds could potentially be repurposed to cover these increases that we're assuming in the preliminary forecast. If there are non-recurring items in the preliminary forecast, they could potentially be funded with fiscal 19 year end to reduce pressure on the school operating fund. And early indicators show that actual enrollment is still contracting a bit. If enrollment comes in under the projection this year, that'll have an effect on the enrollment projections for next year, so the cost of enrollment we've assumed could decrease as well. We don't have enrollment projections for total enrollment, special ed, ESOL, free and reduced, nor is the current staff reconciled, so these numbers are all estimates based on our best guess. And the last thing I'd like to say is remember that 1% of our budget is $30 million. So a $37 million gap, although concerning, is not alarming at this early stage.
Thank you. Just one last comment and question to our superintendent is that since superintendent is scheduled to present his proposed budget in the first meeting in January, and generally need to have all the information, all the numbers, at least a month prior to that, which is really about a little more than 2 months from now. Within the next a little more than 2 months, all those numbers will become a little more concrete.
Will they? Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're going to have the membership numbers you heard from Mary Beth October 10th. Then you take those numbers and put that into all of our projections. The special ed comes a little bit later. The market stuff, we're still busy doing the market analysis, but we've given our best thinking here. Yes, I think we're going to be in a good position at the time when I present the budget to this board in December. We're also, and again, I think it has been said, and that's going to be repeated, we are talking with the county leadership at a level that I believe is unprecedented. We're asking about their assumptions, their data. We're talking about what their best thinking is, and we're sharing that as part of these, as part of this fiscal forecast. Which the truth is, those conversations didn't even happen before, and they just went with assuming we'd get nothing. I think we're going to be able to have the same sort of collaborative leadership this year that we displayed last year. I also had a chance, I attended a regional retreat with superintendents. The state superintendent joined. I am hopeful, based on my conversations with him and our advocacy here at the region, that Governor Northam will do additional work to support public K-12 education and pre-K in his upcoming budget. So those factors combined, I really think are going to put us in a good place when the budget's presented in December.
That sounds so sweet, Dr. Brabrand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. Ms. Evans?
Yes, thank you for this presentation. I first have a process question. I'm not sure if this is to the superintendent or to the chair. When we do have more final figures and an update, are we going to get them and have a work session on them or no? On the.
At this point, we are not planning on a work session for this part of the annual work. Instead, what we will be doing is your budget chair and vice chair will be arranging for meetings with each of the board members to talk about this presentation as well as priorities in the budgeting process. Okay. And then Dr. Brabrand will bring back to us his plan for an integrated or a more collaborative approach to the budget.
Okay, so we'll have the updated figures as part of the conversation Ms. Daranack-Kofax referred to. All right, that's fine. I would recommend that some of the details that you provided to us, Ms. Burden, be put into writing. I was feverishly writing what you were saying because those details I think are important. 514 more students, that would be, we were looking at thousands of students additional for many years, so having only an addition of 514, if that proves to be true, that's a significant reduction from just a couple of years ago. So that will be important in terms of where we actually are. So if that's leveling off, I think that's something that would be useful to see. Also, zero increase in VRS. That's huge. For years we had $25 million in increases, and that was part of our struggle. So I'm certainly happy to hear that. But I think I heard you say, Ms. Burden, that ERFC is increasing. Did you give us a figure on what the ERFC is projected?
Yes, the rate is going from 6.26 to 6.44, and that represents an increase of 2.7 million.
2.7 million. Okay,
yes.
that's.
I probably didn't mention. I didn't mention that level of detail on the numbers.
That's still modified from some of our years past. So that's good news as well. And of course, healthcare keeps going up for all of us. The 8.6 for strategic plan investments. What is that we're anticipating? Or perhaps this is for Dr. Brabrand, too.
Yeah. We want to continue to align our budget with the strategic plan.
Right.
We're doing some work around things that we think can be continuing to invest in the strategic plan. We also know that board members, and you're going to have consultation with the budget chair, have had priorities that have long been interested in that relate to our strategic plan categories, but haven't been able to be funded. So both of those things, the work that we're doing and the work that we know will happen through consultation with your budget chair, could represent some of those areas.
So that's still subject to conversation. You don't have a list in hand of what those are.
Not at this early.
So it's more like a placeholder at this point that we want to continue to move forward on the strategic plan. All right. Well, that's.
And to clarify a bit, I do believe that Dr. Brabrand was talking about some of the staffing adjustments that we might want to take a look at for staffing initiatives in addition to the strategic plan. When you look at strategic plan investments, it does highlight the items that are there for the FCPS on placeholder, those instructional resources, and then
let me go to that slide, Mr. Smith.
Transfers to other funds. And so
I see. Okay, I'm sorry. So it's primary. In fact, most of that then is FCPS on.
Well, and as Ms. Burden highlighted, that we know that we're going to be bringing something to the board, and that it wouldn't be prudent for us to not add that as a possible placeholder at this early portion of the budget process, and that whatever decision is made by the board, we at least wanted to recognize that as a placeholder in case the board went that direction. But again, that is a board decision.
Okay. And one last question, which is the staffing standards review. Ms. Burden, what exactly does that represent? That's the $6 million.
Right. Basically, we are undergoing a review of the elementary school general education staffing standards for streamlining and linkage with class size goals of 27:1. We're also taking a look at the ESOL staffing standards and needs-based staffing as well at the elementary school. At the middle and high school, the middle school guidelines are 27.9, and high school it's 31. And so we want to take a look at that as well. The increases in class size were initiated in fiscal 10, fiscal 15, and fiscal 18, so that from fiscal 09 to fiscal 19, this current year, the increase in class size at the elementary was 1.5 students, 1.5 at the middle school, and 2 students at the high school. So we want to take a look at those staffing standards and class sizes and see if there is some work that we can do around those areas.
Well, I certainly support making sure that the needs-based staffing is implemented with fidelity. That's something that I've had a great concern about, and as well as the ESOL standards. So if that's part of what that is, I'm very happy to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Ms. McLaughlin.
Thank you. I want to start with slide 6, where it lists the contractual increases. I apologize if I missed the description of what actually those increases are and why we're seeing that happen.
The contractual increases consist of utility increases of $1.4 million. And again, this is very early, so that is based on historical trend. We also have a number of contractual increases in the departments, some major IT projects, bus operations, and then some other department requirements. I don't know how much level of detail you want, but for IT, for example, there is a contractual increase in EduPoint, McAfee, and those are existing products. There's also some unanticipated increases to Microsoft Word and Adobe. We used to be able to we had an enterprise license, which was a little bit cheaper, and we're not going to be able to do an enterprise license anymore. Those vendors are doing away with that, and so it's going to cost us a little bit more. We also have some upgrades that we need to do with the internet, some Google monitoring, and college and career planning. And so those are the major IT projects, some examples of those things, and that's expected to cost about $2.1 million.
Thank you. And I know you noted it's preliminary, and so, but I would just say, Dr. Brabrand, that as one board member, whenever we wrestle with the budget and we have to go with our wants versus what we need to be doing, in my mind, I think that's going to need to be a line item or a category where I would hope you and your team are looking at and saying, before we go and increase class sizes or look for budget cuts that directly go into the classroom, that it's going to be one of the areas we have to look at. The second slide I wanted to look at is slide 10. And the reason why I wanted to bring up slide 10, and it also ties with slide 11, is that it's saying with the infusion of our target is 95 to 105% of market average, and that this funding is getting us closer there. But then if you look at slide 11 and 12, it's basically saying that we're going to still need to be putting money in for, I think it was FY20, in order to get where we want to be. And so for my colleagues and Dr. Brabrand, I want to yet once again point out the biggest verbal tussle we get into every time on this. These are our salary scales, and we keep talking about what we want to get to market, but market is based on salary scales. And yet, time and time again, it's been proven that our benefits, when you include ERFC as well, is more generous than the surrounding jurisdictions, including the ever-elusive Arlington Public Schools. And if we do not have some comparable PowerPoint slides that do an overlay and show that when you add the benefits in where we are, this school division will continue the risk and the loss of morale among its employees and thinking they're losing money by working here, when in fact, when we're shooting to 95 to 105, that's on the salary scales. Then you add in total compensation and the benefits, and we're absolutely the place that people should want to work at, most likely even right now. I mean, if where that line is. And so I would ask as a next step from tonight's presentation that you be able to provide to the board this exact PowerPoint slide that says when you account for total benefits that we're giving our employees compared to the other schools that are used in this, what does that line then look like? Because I've been saying this for years since your predecessor, Karen Garza. I do not want to paint a false narrative that causes us to lose our best teachers. But this is about total compensation. It's not salaries only.
If I'm Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Brabrand.
No, that's a point well taken. In fact, if you recall last year, we did start to add those slides in on future presentations. Honestly, we've just had a lot going on. The beginning preliminary, we didn't put it in, but we'll have it in for the future ones.
I appreciate that, but I do want that when Ms. Burden's team has time, because that's what I actually want to be sharing with my community, is where are we now with this incredible $120 million infusion in 3 years by virtue of support of this board and the superintendent, our board supervisors, our residents who've championed this. But I feel like we're doing a disservice to our employees, especially if we don't provide a more accurate picture. So that's to me a really very important component of this work. But overall, I want to thank Ms. Burden and her team, because this was a very helpful presentation, and I'm looking forward to the great work that Dr. Brabrand, you've continued to bring in your mindset of working with our county executive, and that this board has been doing now in the 7 years I've been here, really saying with intentionality, how do we extend a collaborative approach to the Board of Supervisors. I think we've been very intentional and done a good job with that in these recent years.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. And I will just offer my remarks before we go to the next portion of our agenda. I want to commend you on the collaborative effort with the county executive. It's certainly something that we are working very carefully board to board on as well, so that collaboration is critical. I do have a couple of comments regarding going forward in the presentation of the budget. When you do this in January, Dr. Brabrand, this board passed a motion the first year I was on the board to align the budget with the strategic plan. Yeah, I'm hoping that this is not going to be elusive with the new budget. It should be easier, given that we have prioritized the budget with, what is it, 8 goals? And so I would like to see in January, when you present it, that we do align it with our budget. I think that that's something that our community expects. Additionally, I was a little surprised on the increase on the ERFC. because last week or 2 weeks ago, we had a great presentation on the ERFC and how well we were doing on the ERFC compared to where we were a year ago or 2 years ago. And so seeing this infusion for the ERFC seems to be disconnected from that presentation. And so you don't need to answer it tonight, but I would like to see some clarification on that going forward.
We can provide that clarification. I do remember that Mr. Martinez's presentation, he talked about the employer contributions increasing from last year to this year. I don't know the exact slide number, but he did mention it. And we knew that we would be talking about that as part of the budget, but that there was an increase to the employer contribution based on the actuarial evaluation that we just recently experienced at ERFC.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We look forward to having greater clarification on that. Okay. Now we go on to the next section of our agenda, confirmation of actions taken in the closed meeting. So I call on Mr. Moon for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to deny the school reassignment appeal of a student who improperly touched other students and confirm the disciplinary decision of the division superintendent.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss. And so all those in favor? We have Ms. Hines, Ms. Palchik, Mr. McElveen, Ms. Derenak-Kofax, Mr. Moon, Ms. Evans, Ms. Strauss, and Ms. Corbett-Sanders. All those against? Abstaining. We have Ms. Schultz, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. McLaughlin, and Mr. Wilson. I call on Ms. Hines for a motion.
I move to deny the appeal of the employee discussed in closed session and to uphold the recommendation of the division superintendent and the hearing officer that the employee's professional license be revoked. I further move that the matter be forwarded to the State Superintendent of Public Instruction and State Board of Education for such further proceedings as may be appropriate.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? We have Ms. Hines, Ms. Palchik, Mr. McElveen, Mr. Moon, and Ms. Strauss. All those against? We have Ms. Schultz, Ms. McLaughlin, and Mr. Wilson. Those abstaining? I have Ms. Evans, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Derenak-Kofax, and Ms. Corbett-Sanders. I call on Ms. Schultz for a motion.
I move that the contract with the teacher identified in closed session not be renewed for the 2018-19 school year, and the teacher should be notified that their contract will not be renewed.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? I have Ms. Strauss, Ms. Schultz, Ms. That's unanimous. We will now go into a forum discussion, followed by going into closed after that. I apologize. We do have board matters. Oh, I'm sorry. I went with the wrong form. I apologize. It's a long name. So we have the consent agenda. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules, provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Many items listed have gone through board review, and documentation has been provided to all board members and the public in advance. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member prior to the meeting. Item 6.01, approve the minutes from the September 13th, 2018 regular meeting. Item 6.02, appoint individuals to serve a one-year term on the Challenged Materials Interdepartmental Review Committee as detailed in the agenda item. Item 6.03, approve the recommended changes to Policy 1475, approval process for research, studies, and data collection activities as detailed in the agenda item. Item 6.04, award the contract for the chiller replacement at Carson Middle School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Edwin Kocharian and Company, Inc., in the amount of $683,000, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Item 6.05, award the contract for the chiller replacement at Lane Elementary School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Edwin Kocharian and Company, Inc., in the amount of $235,900, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Item 6.06, confirm the separations for the period beginning July 1, 2018 and ending July 31st, 2018, and for the period beginning August 1st, 2018 and ending August 31st, 2018. Item 6.07, approve the Governance Committee recommendations for revisions to the Strategic Governance Manual regarding the Advisory Committee for Students with Disabilities. Item 6.08, appoint individuals to serve on committees as detailed in the agenda item. Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda? Seeing no objection, hearing no objection, the consent agenda is approved. Now we have 7, new business. The following are new business agenda items. There will not be a vote tonight on these items, but action is scheduled at a future meeting. 7.01, award a contract for the Annandale High School roof replacement project to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute, deliver, and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Item 7.02, award a contract for the Bellevue Elementary School renovation project to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute, deliver, and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Item 7.03, award a contract for the Chantilly High School roof replacement project to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute, deliver, and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Item 7.04, award the contract for the running track replacement at Edison High School to Field Turf USA, Inc. in the amount of $299,973, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Item 7.05, award the contract for the automatic temperature control system replacement at Navy Elementary School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Item 7.06, award the contract for the automatic temperature control system replacement at McNair Elementary School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Now we have superintendent matters, and I call on Dr. Brabrand.
I have no matters to share except that it's been a wonderful beginning of school. This was a wonderful meeting tonight. Thank you for all the comments and questions on the opening of schools report, and we look forward to a wonderful school year in Fairfax County Public Schools. Thank you.
So now we go to board committee reports, and I call on Ms. Evans for an update on the governance committee, and Ms. McLaughlin for a report on the audit committee, and Mr. Moon for a report on the forum. No, Mr. Moon, we will have to have you do that later.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Governance Committee met this week, and we did start the update of the Strategic Governance Manual. We got through the first 25 pages of it. Our goal is to have the redone Strategic Governance Manual in a few months. You know, we've got a strategy for dealing with it. We discussed the retreat that we're going to have on October 19th, which will be October 18th, 5 to 9 p.m. We will start, basically two topics will be the school board staff communications process, as well as we wanted to include in that follow-up to next steps and school board inquiries as part of that discussion. And then we will go to the code of conduct. So those will be the two topics that we will discuss. We have a facilitator for it. And we will be happy to have her. Number 3, we also revisited the policy on changes regarding advocacy letters. We made some revisions according to what the board asked us to do, and we are going to bring that back to a school board work session soon. We did, I guess at that time, I can go through the details. We basically consolidated some things and made clear how to deal with dissenting positions, or if this was something being written just by one or a few school board members. We also looked at the guidance on professional development funds, and we are going to make some recommendations. We ask the clerk to put our thoughts into language, which we will see at our next governance committee meeting, and hopefully get it out of governance and bring that also to a work session very soon.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Ms. McLaughlin, would you like to give us a report on the audit committee?
Certainly. So the audit committee met yesterday. It was a great first meeting. We had an opportunity to meet many of the new members within the Office of the Auditor General. There's essentially been a lot of change. So at this point, beyond Teresa Weatherman and one other auditor, the rest of the team is pretty new over the last 6 months. So dynamic group and excited about the work they can bring. We essentially reviewed the status of our FY19 audit engagements, where we are in the audit plan, and everything looks well and following along the expected schedule. The Auditor General, Esther Coe, also presented to us a new document called the Auditor General's Performance Expectations, and that will be for this next year's evaluation for her on her performance. So she presented it to the committee for review. We'll then be able to discuss it with the full board, but also get some additional input from the audit committee members on that. We then got a presentation about the audit software implementation, which may not sound super exciting, but it is an absolute improvement to improving the audit productivity that's coming out of the office. It's something that FCPS Office of the Auditor General has been looking at for several years now, and so the team is extremely excited about the implementation. And as they shared with us, it was done in a competitive bidding fashion, and so that will, I think, again, help us with a lot of our data gathering and work over time. We then got an update on our school audits for our business process turnover audits, where we have a finance tech or a principal who changes leadership in a building, and of those 7 audits, there wasn't anything that was of high risk, but we did talk about process-wise how we might get a little more information and follow up on those audits where there might be a moderate risk identified for, typically it's just more execution and business practices. And then finally, we talked about ways that we could enhance the school board and the public's awareness of the audit committee and the OAG's work together. And so we will certainly bring that to a more formalized briefing with the board, but one of the things we talked about was perhaps quarterly update from our Auditor General at work sessions, so that, again, from a visibility standpoint, the board can be kept apprised of any projects they're working on beyond the audit plan, but also increasing the visibility for the Auditor General to the public and understanding the role and the work that they're doing. So that's a synopsis of what we covered yesterday.
Thank you very much, Ms. McLaughlin. Now we have board matters, and I call on Ms. Hines.
I will pass, since we have more business after this meeting.
Mr. Wilson?
I'll pass as well.
Ms. Palchik? Mr. McElveen? Ms. Derenak Kovacs? Mr. Moon?
I yield my time.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to yield it because I'm going to tell everybody about one thing that is important for the public to know and all of you as well. This Saturday, there will be the Out of Darkness Walk sponsored by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Registration is free to the public. The walk is from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The registration is from 9 to 11. And there is going to be a team that's led by Fairfax County government leaders, including Chairman Bulova, Supervisor John Cook, Delegate Eileen Fillercorn, myself, the police chief, fire chief. I mean, it's really important that we try and raise awareness, because in this county and in this country, we are still losing young people to suicide. It's the second leading cause of death. And so, you know, I know my colleagues want to yield my time, but I want people to know about this walk, and I want them to know that it doesn't cost anything, but it means everything to the families who have been touched by suicide, and we've got to continue to raise awareness and save lives.
Ms. McLaughlin, I want to add, if people cannot be there in person, I will be coaching my Girls on the Run. You can also walk virtually, so that's another way to join the team.
Thank you, Ms. Palchik. That's very insightful. I didn't know you could do that, so I appreciate it. Okay. I skipped over Ms. Derenak Kovacs.
You didn't skip over me. I said I passed, but I just remembered I had something similar to Ms. McLaughlin. I think it's an important issue that I wanted to tell you about. There is a showing of a movie called Screenagers, and it is a movie that a physician in the community, a pediatrician, approached me and said she's getting lots of parents who are asking, what can I do about screen time? And she felt that this particular movie is something that can be brought to a larger audience. It's appropriate for ages 10 through adults. It's to come with your children. There will be a screening at Edison High School on October 3rd, and doors open at 6 with the showing from 6:30 to about 8.
Thank you, Ms. Derenak Kovacs.
Thank you for letting me go back.
You're welcome. Ms. Keys-Gamarra. Ms. Evans.
Thank you. I want to say how pleased I was with the free student bus pass pilot project at Justice High School. We had a lovely launch of that last week, and I do hope that every single student at Justice High School takes advantage of it. One thing that came up was students were worried that maybe there were limited numbers. There aren't. Every student there is welcome to receive their bus pass and start riding on Metro and the Q buses for free. I was also pleased to go to the Superintendent Student Advisory Council the other day for their first meeting of the year. It's always great to see the enthusiasm of the students there and to listen to their conversation about pathways to graduation, which we asked the superintendent to bring to them. So I think we're going to get some good feedback from that group. I also just want to briefly talk about the School Health Advisory Committee, which met for its first time last night, and they again are going to be looking at student stress, and I will be bringing on their behalf a couple of the items that are of importance to them, some that came from their recommendations last year, and others that they're going to be bringing forward, but they again are very concerned about student stress, and I'll be talking with my colleagues about ways to move those issues forward.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Ms. Schultz?
I'm worried about FCPS staff support of school board meetings stress, and looking forward to the governance meetings streamlining and getting rid of forum, just so that, like every other board, we can bring topics to the table here. And I asked Madam Chair to consider, in an effort to speed things along, since we're committing to 2 more meetings after this, as we head into our 7th hour meetings, that we do the forum topic here for the courtesy of our staff.
Thank you. I have no problem with having it here, but I believe that Mr. Moon is checking on whether or not we can do that. So Ms. Strauss?
Pass. On to our next 2 meetings.
Okay. I am going to hold up one thing. All of you should have in front of you a something for Step Up for Kids. It was a wonderful event that was held at the Government Center this morning regarding supports for students and children in Fairfax County that experience domestic violence either directly or as bystanders, and providing them the supports that are necessary to help them deal with the traumatic stress associated with domestic violence. And they are asking for people to please wear the purple, the shoelaces. So put them in your tennis shoes. Okay, no, we already have the shirts. We talked about that earlier. So with that, this meeting is adjourned. We'll do it here. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can do here.
Yes. So now we will open up our forum discussion, and Ms. Hines has brought an important topic to us about our advisory committees, and so the floor is yours, Ms. Hines.
Thank you very much.